Hello everyone, and welcome to another amazing part of What If Deku Ran an Orphanage? This amazing story was written by Kyodon. Please support them. Don't forget to like, sub, and leave a comment. Now let's dive in. Oh dear, now how did it come to this? Frisk sighed as they stood in the simulation room, which was now simulating an empty city. Opposite to them was Kiba, who looked ready and eager to fight. Well, maybe it had something to do with Frisk admitting that they wanted to be a hero in the future. And maybe they let it slip that they were a little bit strong. And maybe Kiba had overheard that and asked, rather insistently, if they could fight. And maybe Frisk had a problem saying no to people. Oh well, what's done is done, Frisk thought. Fuku was watching in the viewing room, along with some other interested kids. Snap! Frisk looked over to one of the hidden cameras and winked. This one's for you guys. Confident are you? You know you're fighting one of the strongest members of the Midoriya clan. Kiba asked. Yup, but I'm pretty confident in my power. Frisk smirked. Speaking of confidence, are you sure you don't want to use your sword, GF? She seemed pretty upset when you said you wanted to go hand to hand. We are not in that kind of relationship, and I'm sure. Don't want to hurt my little sister's precious friend too badly. Kiba said. Well, you don't need to worry about that, Frisk said. Now then, let's have a good time, shall we, my lady? Kiba smirked and charged forward. Snap! Frisk scooted over to the side casually, dodging Kiba's punch. Nope. Kiba quickly moved over to Frisk and let loose a flurry of punches, but Frisk dodged all of them before jumping back onto a balcony away from her. Frisk leaned against the wall, putting one arm casually behind their head and motioning for Kiba to come at them. Kiba's brow twitched. Cocky little dash. She tried to command Frisk's shadow, only to realize something. Frisk's shadow was gone. In fact, all the shadows were gone. They wished all the shadows away. Kiba realized. With that plan gone, Kiba simply lunged at Frisk. Snap! Only for Frisk to vanish, causing Kiba to hit nothing but the wall. After shaking off the debris from slamming through the wall, Kiba looked around for Frisk. Up here, Frisk said in a sing-song voice. Kiba looked up and saw Frisk standing directly above them, standing on seemingly nothing. Frisk jumped down next to Kiba and leaned on the railing. You know, to beat me, you have to hit me, right? I could say the same. Aren't you going to attack? Kiba asked, trying to figure out how to deal with this troublesome foe. Nah, I'm what you call a pacifist. So I don't really fight people. You can fight me. I just won't fight you. Frisk explained. Wait, what? Then how do you win? Kiba asked, very confused by the idea of winning a fight without fighting. You don't need to hurt someone to stop them from fighting. In this case, I'm just going to keep going until you get tired. Frisk explained. I see. Well then, let's see if you can keep dodging, once I start putting in some real effort. Kiba said, before lunging at Frisk with greater speed and punching them in the face, sending them flying into the side of another building. Frisk lay in the rubble for a second, before pulling themselves up and sighing. Alright, I guess that was my fault for being cocky. And getting rid of all the shadows is taking a bit too much energy. Snap! The little damage that Kiba had done vanished, and Frisk looked back over at Kiba. Alright, let's take this more seriously. I could feel the shadows come back. But Frisk's shadow is still gone. Kiba noted. Why did the shadows come back? Was there a time limit? But then why does Frisk still not have their shadow? Ugh. No time to try and play detective. Time to take them by surprise. Kiba summoned shadows from behind Frisk, turning them into arms, and tried to have them attack Frisk from behind. Snap! Only for Frisk to vanish once more. Teleportation is a really annoying power, Kiba decided. Then she felt a tap on her shoulder. She swung her fist behind her, but Frisk just ducked under it, then rose up and booped Kiba's nose. Kiba tried to headbutt them, but Frisk just teleported away before the attack landed. Frisk whistled, altering Kiba to their location back on the street. Kiba sprouted wings and flew up into the air. How do I hit them? I hit them once, but they seem faster now. And my attack didn't do any real damage. Maybe the key is just to crush them, with pure, overwhelming power. Her plan decided. Kiba summoned every shadow in the fake city. Suddenly, shadows began moving like water, oozing out, rushing out of buildings, and pouring into the stress, overtaking the ground like a flood. Hop! Frisk jumped onto a nearby rooftop as the street was flooded, and soon the entire city was flooded by shadows. Behold the Black Sea. Now, drown. Abyssal whirlpool. Kiba cried. Suddenly, the shadows began moving, spiraling around a single point, forming a whirlpool. The force of the shadows' movements pushed against the buildings. Smaller builders were instantly destroyed, while other buildings started to crack and crumble before collapsing into the shadows. Snap! Frisk flew up as the building they were standing on crumbled, leaving nowhere to stand in a violent sea of shadow. Wow, now that's impressive. An entire city destroyed, just fight little old me? I'm touched. TCH. Reverse black rain. Kiba shouted. The whirlpool stopped, and suddenly thousands of shadow bullets rose up from the black sea, rising upwards towards the ceiling and Frisk. Snap! An explosion of light burst out from Frisk's fingers, dissolving the shadow bullets that were coming at them, making them vanish. Grrrrrrrr. Kiba struggled to keep her grip on the shadows, but she'd used too much of her blood power to destroy an entire city, and her control slipped. The shadow sea quickly began to vanish, leaving only the rubble and ruins of the city behind. Looks like you're out of juice. Frisk noticed, giving Kiba a kind look. Let's call it here, my lady. Kiba pouted heavily. You did well. Although this is far from my full power, I'm still wearing my power-restricting suit. And I don't have Hinata, so I'm sure I could put up a better fight. Whatever you say, my lady. Frisk winked. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX she watched the end of the fight from the observation room. Impressive for sure, even if Kiba was holding back. Seikyo said, "The power to grant wishes is truly powerful." Meanwhile, Ji and Fu were jotting down things in their notebooks as they conversed. So Frisk definitely gave themselves a super powerful body. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to keep up with Kiba, Ji said, which I suppose made sense. Yes, but did you see how the shadows came back during the match? Since Frisk's shadow was still gone, it probably wasn't a time limit. Frisk made the shadows come back, but why? Fu asked. It's hard to tell because of Frisk's personality. It could be because of practical reasons, or they could have just been messing around, Ji noted. Also, I want to see if the shadows came back at the same time they healed themselves, because that could mean they can grant multiple wishes at once. Good idea. This is going to be fun to watch again, Fu said, almost smiling a bit. Izuku watched the footage of Frisk's fight with Kiba, looking at the scuffle very closely. It's concerning, isn't it? How powerful they are, Yonda said. She was the one who brought this fight to his attention. A bit. They're kind of like Lu and Seikyo, which is strange considering the unnatural origin of those two. Izuku noted. Although I do think you're being a bit overly cautious. Yonda huffed. In all honesty, she really didn't care for this Frisk person, simply because of one reason. She couldn't read their mind. They'd probably made a wish that shielded their mind from her quirk, and not like Yonda could blame them. People were entitled to the privacy of their thoughts, and if they could prevent their minds from being read, Yonda had no right to tell them to stop. But that didn't stop it from making Yonda extremely uncomfortable. She couldn't help but wonder what they were thinking, and her thoughts typically spiraled out into paranoia. Yeah, she knew it was a problem. She was trying to overcome it. But these things happen slowly. Putting my personal issues aside, here is what Fu and Ji were able to guess from that fight. Yonda said, handing Izuku a stack of papers. Izuku swiftly read through them. Frisk seemed to be able to comfortably alter their strength, speed, durability, and other natural abilities, at least to the level of Kiba's restricted power. What's more, they seemed to have some experience with fighting. Not much, but they were definitely receiving training on how to dodge. Either that or they wished for it. On top of that, they seemed to be able to grant at least 2 wishes at once. What's more, there seemed to be some limit within the nature of their wishes. Although given Frisk's nature, it's hard to tell if those are real limits, or just them playing around. First, was them restoring the shadows. This could imply some kind of limitation with persistent wishes. Either they could only have so many wishes happening at once, or it was a matter of not having enough power to maintain it. Also, they notably didn't restore their own shadow, meaning that Kiba having control of their shadow might prove to be problematic in some way, despite their amazing reaction time and ability to react to attacks from their blind spots. Lastly, Frisk didn't just wish for Kiba to fall unconscious, or wish for anything that affected Kiba directly, like weakening her or removing some of her powers. Of course, That could just be because she felt that wasn't fair, or it could be some kind of limitation. Izuku smiled at the notes. Those two are really through, huh? Honestly, the notes were only somewhat useful, as none of the information in here was concrete. The only thing they were even sure about was Frisk being able to increase their power, and Frisk being able to grant multiple wishes at once. And really they shouldn't be so sure of that, because when he looked at the footage, sure it looked like they could grant multiple wishes at once, but it's just as likely that they just made those wishes in quick succession. But still, Izuku was proud of the amount of effort and insight they put into this. Alright, thank you for bringing this to my attention. And for that matter, I'm glad you didn't have to do anything immoral to get this information. Izuku told her, giving his daughter a gentle pat on the head. And please keep it that way. Yes, father, Yonda said. Yawn. Knees stretched as she woke up, bright and early. She used her vectors to take off her covers, before then using them to lift herself out of bed and onto her feet. She stretched a bit, waking herself up completely. Okay, time for breakfast. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX ate their breakfast together in the cafeteria. Yeah, the plot was kinda lame, but the animation was just beautiful. Niece said, thoroughly enjoying today's meal of French toast and sausage. Right? You could feel the love in each frame. The passion. The talent. You know, Ken's animations always look good, but it doesn't feel as good as animation like this. Fuku noted. Well, Ken doesn't really have that much passion in what he does. He just likes money. He's not an artist. Nice pointed out. I'm not sure I'd go that far, Fuku said sheepishly. Kinda feels a little gatekeepy. Maybe. I'm right though. Nice asserted. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Alright kids, can anyone tell me what the answer is? Kyoshi asked his class. Nice raised her hand. 28. Incorrect. Kyoshi said. You forgot to carry the 2. Nice looked down at her notebook and realized her mistake, her face turning bright red as she realized she just embarrassed herself in front of the whole class. Sorry. It's fine. Remember, making mistakes is part of learning. Kyoshi reminded them, dashing over to Nice in a flash and patting her on the head. I'm just glad you worked up the courage to try. Nice felt a sense of reassurance and looked around to see if anyone was judging her, only to find little to no judgment. Kyoshi dashed back in front of the desk. Alright, would anyone else like to try? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Alright, now just move your arms like I showed you, Izuku instructed. He and Nice were in the pool, Izuku holding her up as they continued their bi-weekly swimming lessons. Like this, Nice said as she swam forward a little. You like that? Perfect. Izuku praised me. Good job. Nice smiled, feeling the warmth of Izuku's praise course through her, and she started taking more confident strokes. Good. Alright, I think after today, I won't have anything left to teach you, Izuku said. Oh. Nice pouted. She always enjoyed spending this time with Izuku. It just felt nice having a caring, loving father. Like an itch had finally been scratched. Oh, it's okay. I still have lots I can teach you if you're interested, Izuku said while bringing her into his embrace. Nice nodded, before leaning into his embrace. I love having a good family. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Did I do a good job? Sheena asked as she set down her nail brush. Yeah, it looked great, Nice said as she admired her newly painted red toenails. Kuki inspected his toenails closely. Yeah, they pass. Show me how to do the fingernails next. Excellent work, Sheena. Kiba praised. It's so nice to spend time with the girls. And my brother. Ko typed. Is that supposed to mean something? Kuki asked, sending his sister a mean look. Ko just smiled and patted Kuki on the head. Don't get paint all over the wig. Sheena and Kuki shouted at the same time. Nice couldn't help but giggle at the cute antics in front of her. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Alright, my loyal minions. Welcome to today's broadcast, Kiba said into her camera. She and Nice sat together in her room, controllers in their hands. Today we're going to play Tarnished Spirits 2. And as you can see, we have Nice from Nice and Easy Over as a guest once again. Hey guys. Nice greeted peppily, having gotten used to introducing herself on camera by now. Nice and Kira stream. Let's go? Man, these two stream together a lot. Makes me wonder why she has her own channel. 'Cause she feels like it. How many controllers do you think Kiba will break this time? You think Knees will smash the TV again? Now enough talk. Let's get to playing. Kiba said. Knees took a deep breath. This time, she was determined not to get upset and break anything. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Okay, let us begin, Giza said as he and Knees stood on opposite sides of the training room. Right. Knees steeled herself, getting her vectors ready. Giza nodded, before dashing right at her. As soon as Giza entered her range, Knees sent out her vectors, sending two that came from the left and right, and behind those one that came from above, and behind that, one that came from below. Giza ducked under the two vectors, rushing past the overhead vector as it tried to slam into him, and kicked the vector that tried to grab his foot aside. Knees tried to move her vectors back at Giza to grab him from behind, but Giza had reached her, just before her vectors could touch her. Done, Giza said as he flicked Knees' forehead. Knees pouted. How can you tell where they are? They may be invisible, but they still make a sound as they move through the air. Most won't notice, but some will. You make your vectors tangible far too early, and you hesitate too much with your attacks. Your vectors can move faster than me. Use that to keep the area covered. It makes it harder for an enemy to approach. Giza said. Yes, sir. Knees sighed, a feeling of frustration at her own flaws growing inside of her. Giza patted her on the head. Don't be ashamed. We all have to learn at some point. Even I had to learn the basics of combat at some point, even with my quirk. Improvement will come, with time and effort. Knees smiled a bit. Thank you, sir. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX session. They weren't playing any song in particular, they were just doing an exercise to make sure they could stay in perfect harmony, without anyone missing a beat. Knees was slamming the drums, as usual. The beat the band created was almost hypnotic, in a real good way. And the sense of pride Knees felt to be a part of that rhythm could not be understated. Of course, that would only make it sting more if Asachi was the one who messed it up and made them start over. Which is why, despite the relaxing beat, Knees stayed focused, making sure she got everything right. She didn't get too tense. She'd made that mistake before, and it caused her to hesitate and slip up more ironically. She carried some confidence in her skills and let her practice guide her. All right, I think that's enough for now, Sheena called, causing everyone to stop. Phew. Fuku let out a sigh of relief. Ko patted her on the back and hit the girls with a big smile and thumbs up. Knees smiled down at her drumsticks, a feeling of relief and fulfillment at not having dropped the ball a single time. Great job, girls. Sheena cheered. Let's go get dinner. Sheena held up a hand, and the girls shared a four-way high five. Izuku finally laid down to go to bed, getting comfy in his sheets and laying his head on his pillow, ready to close his eyes. And like clockwork, the door to his bedroom opened. This was not a rare occurrence, either because he suddenly had more work to do, or because one of the kids wanted to sleep together. Thankfully, it seemed to be the latter this time. With Knees walking in, with her eyes closed, and fake snores coming out of her mouth, she stumbled towards Izuku's bed and crawled in next to him, clinging to his side. Izuku smiled a bit before laying back down. Good night, Kira. Kira's eyes opened, and she scowled at him. How did you know? Your movements always set you apart. It makes it pretty easy to tell who's in control. Izuku explained as he gently rubbed Kira's head. I don't get you. You're smart, but you're so nice to me. Kira said, not moving away from Izuku at all. I believe I've told you. I trust that you're not trying to kill me anymore, and I don't hold your past against you. A child deserves to be loved and cared for. End of sentence. Izuku told her. Or do you just like hearing that over and over? Kira stayed silent. You can still see and feel things when Knees is in control, right? Izuku asked, although he was already pretty sure of the answer. I won't press about that now, but we will talk about it later. Izuku looked down at Kira and found that she was fast asleep. Really asleep this time. Likely because she switched to Knees. Good night, you two, Izuku said, before falling asleep himself. All right, guys, we did it. Our song got 1 million views. Sheena shouted out triumphantly to her fellow bandmates, who were all gathered in front of her in the band's club room. Heck yes. Ko celebrated, the robotic text-to-speech contrasting with her literal jumping for joy. All right, we did it. Knees cheered, giving Fuku a high five. That's great, Fuku said, forcing enthusiasm. Honestly, She knew darn well that the reason they got that many views wasn't because of their talent, but rather because they were Midoriyas. And Midoriyas doing anything nowadays garnered a lot of attention. Sure, people were leaving nice comments, but that was because they were kids. Hence why she wasn't jumping for joy. She knew the other girls knew that as well, but they were actively ignoring it for the sake of enjoying their achievement, which is why she would do her best to ignore it as well. So what should we do to celebrate? Mr. Midoriya says we can do whatever we want. Within reason. Shina explained. Let's go out. Ko immediately typed. Let's not. Fuku argued just as fast. Come on, Fuku, it won't be so bad. We can go out somewhere with fewer people. Like an ice cream place. Shina suggested. Oh, I love ice cream. Niz added. I like this plan. But we can have ice cream here. Fuku argued. Yeah, but it won't feel like it's special. Shina countered. Didn't you say you were going to try and go outside more? Ko brought up. Fuku gulped, as she quickly realized the tide of the conversation had turned against her. You don't have to go if you don't want to, Niz assured her. But I'd really like it if you were there. Sis. Finini. Fuku groaned as she saw the puppy dog looks the other girls were giving her. I'll go. Yeah. The other girls cheered. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX ask. Uh-huh, Shina confirmed. And you can't just stay at home and eat ice cream? Izuku asked. You sound like Fuku. Shina pouted. We just want to go outside and celebrate. Something different. Well, I guess it should be fine. Just as long as you take Sori, Sai, and Tokoshi with you. Izuku said. And a platoon of soldiers. Thank you. Love you, Dad. Shina said as she quickly went over to give Izuku a hug. She's finally calling me Dad now. Man, that makeup sure did give her a confidence boost. Izuku thought as he hugged her back. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX small ice cream place rather quickly. Naturally, the patrons and employees were a bit shocked when Midoriya's and their bodyguards showed up, but the girls were doing their best to ignore the stares they were getting and just enjoy their time there. So good. Fuku sighed happily as she ate up her 2 ice cream cones. Sugar was one of the things that always worked wonders for calming down her anxiety. I'm glad you girls are enjoying yourselves, Tokoshi said as he stood beside them, with Sai and Sori sitting at a table next to them. Nee sat quietly, happily eating up both the ice cream and the atmosphere. Sure, some people. Okay, a lot of people were just staring at them, but others had decided to just ignore them and go about their day, eating, talking, and generally having a good time. It was nice. Meanwhile, a figure in a big coat and hat that covered up their entire body walked up the window of the ice cream shop. Guards who were standing around the ice cream shop noticed the suspicious person and readied their weapons. Snipers took aim at the man, ready to fire if he did anything suspicious. When the figure got to the window, he unbuttoned his trench coat. "Sir, what are you doing?" asked one of the soldiers. The figure then opened up the coat, revealing a giant hole in its chest. Suddenly, the hole began to suck in everything in front of it, tearing the front of the building apart and sucking it into the hole. Immediately, the soldiers opened fire, but the bullets either bounced off, or if they did go through, the figure seemed to be unaffected. Ah! People screamed as they started being moved towards the hole. Suddenly, the girls flew towards it, faster than anyone else, like they were being pulled by some invisible force. Ah! What's going on? Fuku screamed as she and the girls were sucked into the hole. Shit! Sori shouted as she rushed forward, activating her fractal and diving into the hole. Tokoshi actuated his own fractal, creating a portal in front of him to the hole, and jumping in the hole before it stopped sucking things in. Ack! Damn it! Sai shot 2 swords into the figure's shoulders, making it fall on its back, before more portals appeared over it, and pinned it to the ground. Sai rushed over and looked into the hole on its chest. She brought a sword into her hand and shoved it into the hole to see if it would go into wherever the others went, only to find that it didn't. The hole was now just a regular hole. Shit! Sai looked over to the figure's head and removed its hat, revealing it was faceless, looking like some kind of mannequin. What did you do to them? Answers now. The thing remained silent and still, not even moving an inch. He didn't react to the bullets or my swords at all. Anomo. Sai cursed. Damn it. I can't threaten him. I just have to hope that whatever this thing didn't kill them. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX towards what looked like a desert, with the bodyguards falling behind them. Fuku passed out mid-fall, her gas bursting from her body. Thankfully, she was behind the other girls, so they didn't get a whiff of it, but the bodyguards were falling towards it. Tokoshi activated his fractal's power, creating a portal in front of himself and Sori, sending them to the ground without hitting the gas. Meanwhile, Kira took over, using her vectors to grab the girls and bring them all together. Reaper, make yourself useful. Oh, it's you, Sheena said as she realized that she was no longer looking at knees, before remembering that they were approaching the ground very quickly. All right, everyone, hold on. Sheena quickly made several cuts into her own arm. Wings burst out of her back, and Sheena quickly started flapping them as Kira kept them together using her vectors, slowing down their fall enough that when they hit the ground, they did so softly. Ko silently let out a sigh of relief as she fell to her knees on the sand below them. Thank goodness you girls are all right, Tokoshi said as he ran to them with Sori in tow. We're not all right yet, Kira said, gesturing to their surroundings. Where are we? Sheena asked as she looked around, getting her arm ready to start cutting herself if needed. Kira took note of her surroundings. They were in a desert, and it appeared to be daytime. But there was no sun, and the sky was purple. What's more, it didn't seem to be particularly hot, or even really cold. Probably some kind of weird pocket dimension. Kira proposed. Butler, can you get us out of here? Tokoshi activated his fractal once more, attempting to form a portal from here to the real world. I'm afraid not. I'm not really sure how to use this to go to different dimensions. I'm also not sure it could do that, to begin with. TCH. Kira scowled. You could call them by their names, you know. Nee said from inside her head. Kira's eyes went wide. How are you awake? I knew you were going to try and take control the moment we went through the portal, so I braced myself. Nees explained. That doesn't you know what. Sure. Who cares? Just stay quiet, and let me get us through this. Kira ordered as she placed her vector down into the sand. She felt vibrations. Something was moving under the sand. Unfortunately, she wasn't skilled enough to tell what it was. But it was something. Get ready, Kira warned. We're not alone. Sori and Tokoshi prepared themselves for battle, while Sheena cut her arm several times. Not a second later, the ground started to shake, and suddenly, things started to pop out of the sand surrounding them. Nomu. They looked different. Not exposed brains. But there was no mistaking them as human. Monstrous creatures, with no life in their eyes or body movements. And in the back, behind all of them, was a larger, whale-like Nomu rose up, with 4 people on its back. Sheena and Nisa's eyes went wide as they saw the 4. One was a large bald man with pale skin, wearing a long gray coat with no shirt, showing off his scared abs, as well as baggy camo-patterned pants and big black boots. Next to him was a woman with long silver hair, wearing a dark blue suit. She looked mostly normal, except for her abnormally long arms and fingers. Then there was another man with black hair, who was wearing no shirt at all, a pair of jeans, and no shoes. Lastly, there was a woman with green skin and orange eyes, wearing a purple dress. She also had a weird antennae coming out of the top of her head. It seems like you have something that belongs to us, said the long-armed woman, the pairs looking at Kira and Sheena respectively. The hell? Is that Gammy? The fuck are you wearing all that crap on your face for? Shouted the bald man. It appears Midori has given her several bad habits, as expected. The long-armed woman scowled. Huh. What a joke. At least our Kira still looks like herself. The green woman laughed. Yeah. Back when we saw those videos, we thought she'd lost her mind, but I still see a killer's look in her eye. The shirtless man smirked. Gonna take a stab in the dark and say you know these guys? Sori asked. They're our parents. Sheena and Kira said at the same time, both of them sharing a venom tone. Oh, our parents? Nies gasped. Oh, so I finally get to beat the shit out of those assholes. Sori smirked as she got ready to pounce. Yes, as a father and grandfather myself, I'm quite eager to bust their heads open like coconuts. Tokoshi said as he cracked his knuckles. Ignoring the 2 bodyguards, the long-armed woman addressed the 2 child assassins. Children, we're willing to forgive and forget, to an extent, and give you the opportunity to come back to us. Of course, your little friends there will have to die, and you will be punished for your betrayal. But you'll live. Sheena opened her mouth, ready to immediately spit out a reply. But whatever she was about to say was held back, as Kira gave her answer even faster. Is that a joke? Kira hissed, as she fixed a harsh glare on her parents, barely held back tears brimming in the corner of her eyes while she clenched her teeth so hard it hurt. Come back. To you. I trained myself half to death. I killed for you. But no matter what I did, you never showed me an ounce of the love Midoriya showed me, just for existing. And now you want me to throw that away? For you? I'll kill you. Why ya? What she said. Sheena added, taken aback by the sheer, overwhelming hostility coming out of Kira at the moment. So intense that Ko actually backed away from her. TSK. What a waste. The long-armed woman spat. Oh well, we can just make another one. Kill them. And with that, the Nomu rushed right at them. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Izuka didn't know what word would be adequate to describe the utter fury he felt. But as he stepped onto the scene in front of the ice cream shop, that was far from the first thing on his mind. The whole area had been locked down by the police and Midoriya Foundation personnel, keeping anyone from wandering in. The Nomu was surrounded by Midoriya Foundation heavy soldier units, with Sai standing next to the creature. Izuka walked up to them. What happened? While we were eating ice cream, this Nomu came up the window and activated a quirk, sucking up the children and bringing them inside of the hole in its chest. Notably, only the children were forcibly sucked in, while Tokoshi and Sori had to dive in before its quirk deactivated. Sai explained. All attempts to stop it while it was using its quirk proved futile. After it stopped, it became completely non-responsive. Izuka scowled. Before he got here, he'd been told that something had briefly interfered with the anti-warp signal in this area and opened a portal for a short time. It was likely that Nomu had been specifically made to bypass his normal measures against warp quirks and bring the children somewhere else. Where exactly, he didn't know. All he knew was that it was somewhere where his warp sensors couldn't pick up. So either it was in some small pocket of the country where he didn't have warp sensors, outside the country entirely, or to another dimension/pocket dimension. Please tell me what I can do to make up for this failure, sir, Sai asked, a hint of desperation in her voice. Stay on standby. Be ready if I need you, Izuka told her, trying to focus his anger on solving this problem and getting his kids back. Sai tightened her fist. Yes, sir. Tell the men to move this thing to the lab and have it studied, Izuku ordered. We need to know more about what's happening. Immediately, the Nomu charged at them. Some of them threw pieces of themselves at them, while another one extended its arms and tried to grab the unconscious Fuku, while another one shot needles out of its arm at Ko. In a flash, Sori diced everything that was coming at them, keeping all of them from harm, but the rest of the Nomu continued advancing. It's going to be really hard to protect those two and take out all these things. Sheena turned to the two non-combatants and raised her scythe. Sorry, guys. In a flash, Sheena cut the two girls, and they suddenly vanished, leaving their clothes behind. What happened to them? Tokoshi asked while he punched Nomu. I erased them from reality for 9 minutes, Sheena explained. What? Sori and Tokoshi shouted, both unable to look at Sheena because of the opponents in front of them. Don't worry, they'll come back in 9 minutes. I've done it before, Sheena explained before cutting a nearby Nomu, killing its organs which caused it to die pretty much immediately. Sori slashed at a few more Nomu, before looking over at their 4 human opponents. Activating her fractal, Sori rushed at them, hoping to take one of them hostage and get them to order the Nomus away. But just as Sori's claws were about to grab onto Sheena's father's, the bald man's, throat, she suddenly stopped. I can't move. Sori was stuck in the air, mid-pounce, her entire body being held in place by some invisible force. Don't underestimate our power, moron, said Kira's mother, whose antenna was now glowing. You little bitch. Time to die. Sheena's father, as he raised his palm, and got ready to deliver a strike down on the helpless cat girl. TCH. Kira sliced apart a Nomu, before using one of her vectors to pick up a sliced-off piece of the Nomu, and tossed it at her mother. Act! Kira's mother grunted as she got smacked in the face, losing hold of her quirk, and allowing Sori to move again, just as Sheena's father was about to deliver an open-palmed strike to her face. Sori jumped back, while at the same time delivering a claw swipe at Sheena's father's face. But her attack barely left a scratch on him. It's like metal, Sori thought as she landed a couple feet back. Get away from there, Sheena shouted. Sori followed instructions and jumped back into the air, intending to land back with everyone. But Nisa's father looked up at her and got ready to speak. Oh, I got a bad feeling about this, Sori thought as she put her arms up to guard. Shit, Kira thought as she jumped up towards Sori, using her vectors to launch herself into the air. Die, Kira's father shouted, and then something shot out of his mouth at Sori, creating a cone of air and sound around it as it broke the sound barrier. Kira managed to grab Sori's foot just in time, pulling her down just in time as the projectile was shot out and cut the top of one of Sori's cat ears. Fuck, Sori hissed as the sound from that attack hurt her ears. Damn it, Kira's father growled as he rubbed his throat. Kira brought them back down to the ground, using her vectors to break her fall. Be careful. That man's quirk is called cutting words. He can turn his words into blades and shoot them out at the speed of sound. If you leave yourself helpless, you'll be dead in no time. He works well with his wife's quirk, telekinesis. She can take control of any one thing in her line of sight. My father's quirk is called imbue trait. He can take traits from something he touches and put them on something else that he's touching. He has glass taped to palms. If he hits you, he can make you as fragile as glass, and he always keeps tungsten on him, making him hard to hurt. Sheena explained as she cut through some more Nomo. And Mother can dash. Then Sheena's mother jumped down onto the sand and stuck her hands into it. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and suddenly hands shot out of the sand and started grabbing onto everyone, pulling them down into the sand. Sori managed to dodge the hands, but she had to be constantly moving as the sand kept trying to pull her under. Kira also managed to slice apart the hands with her vectors, but she had to constantly pull herself up or else the sand would swallow her. Tokoshi raised his fist and slammed it into the sand, the force of his punch blowing the sand away. Sheena attempted to fly up, but sand arms rose up, grabbed her, and continued to pull her down into the sand. Ack! Help! Tokoshi and Sori rushed to try and help her, but they were too late, as Sheena was already dragged under the sand. Sheena, we have to save her, Nis called out. We have to kill that woman as soon as possible. She's taken control of the battlefield and will weaken us until the situation is hopeless, Kira argued. She didn't know why something sounded off about that. Her logic was sound. The best way to ensure her survival was to focus on taking out Sheena's mother. This would mean she'd have to leave Sheena to suffocate beneath the sand. It would be an unfortunate loss to their own forces, but it would be better than losing the battle outright. So why did it still feel so wrong? Because our sister is going to die, you maniac, Nis explained. Kira frowned. That would explain the feeling. Still, it was for the best. And so Kira used her vectors to move her towards Sheena's mother. No, Nis roared. Suddenly, two of Kira's vectors started pushing her towards Sheena, halting Kira as her vectors were pulling her in two separate directions. Kira struggled to take back control of her vectors, but it was no use. And with her vectors in flux, Kira couldn't stop herself from being grabbed by the hands and pulled down into the sand. Stop it. You're going to get us killed. Then go save her, Nis hissed. The sand swallowed them whole, and Kira used one of her vectors to wrap around her mouth to keep sand from getting in. Seeing this, Tokoshi activated his fractal, opened a portal next to him, and dived into him, appearing out of another portal high in the sky, ready to land on Sheena's mother. Kira's mother activated her power, holding him in midair, while Kira's father aimed up at him and got ready to shout. Tokoshi fought against the telekinesis, his immense strength to move his arm in front of him, and open a portal that led to another portal that opened up right next to Sheena's mother. Bastard! He shouted, unleashing another massive boom as the razor-sharp words blasted out of his mouth. The words traveled through the portal and slammed into both Sheena's mouth and the whale-like Nomo, splattering the woman across the now red sand and blasting a hole through the whale. Immediately the sand hands collapsed and the desert returned to normal. Crap! You stupid motherfucker, you kill my wife, Sheena's father shouted as he grabbed Kira's father and glared at him threateningly. Could you focus on the enemy? Kira's mother hissed. Kira pulled herself out of the sand, with Sheena doing the same. Pa, Ack. Sheena vomited up a bunch of sand. Oh, Ack, you okay? Sori asked after dashing over to check on the little reaper. I'll be fine, Sheena said as she spat out more sand. I killed my vulnerability to suffocation. See, I knew she'd be fine. Kira hissed to her headmate. You didn't know that, you monster. Knees barked back. Kira's mother threw Tokoshi away, and the man made a portal, allowing him to quickly regroup with the others. All right, enough games. I'll deal with them. Sheena's father shouted. Launch me at M. Sheena's father jumped into the air, and Kira's mother took hold of him with her quirk and launched him at the four. All four of them jumped out of the way as Sheena's father crashed into the sand. Gammy, get over here, you brat. Sheena's father said as he rushed at Sheena. Sheena flew up, avoiding a punch from her father. My name is Sheena, and you're ruining my makeup. She raised her scythe and prepared to strike at her father with all her might. But she was suddenly slammed into the ground by Kira's mother's telekinesis. While she was vulnerable, Sheena's father got ready to slam his fist down on Sheena, only for a portal to open up in front of his stomach, and Tokoshi's fist slammed into the villain, sending him flying back a couple dozen feet, landing squarely on his back. TCH. Damn butler. Sheena's father groaned as he got up and clutched his stomach. What the hell is with that strength? Sori dashed behind him and slashed his back, only managing to make some deep scratches before she was held in place by Kira's mother's quirk. Sheena's father turned around and got ready to strike her, but once again a portal opened this time, next to Kira's mother's head, and he flicked her, sending her flying off of the whale and onto the sand, where she lay unconscious, her quirk immediately deactivating, allowing Sori to jump out of the way of Sheena's father's attacks. Another one down, Tokoshi thought. Mr. Tokoshi, watch out, Sheena shouted. While dealing with Kira's mother, Kira's father took aim at Tokoshi and shouted, Fucking geezer. Kaboom. Tokoshi couldn't get out of the way or make a portal in time, and razor-sharp words slammed into his chest at the speed of sound, sending him flying back, tumbling miles away across the sand before his back hit an invisible wall. Tokoshi, everyone shouted, and Sori immediately ran over to him. The old man sat against an invisible wall that seemed to mark the edge of this strange pocket dimension. Lodged in his chest were the razor-sharp words Kira's father spat at him, now covered in Tokoshi's blood, which was oozing out of the wound and out of Tokoshi's mouth. Shit, old man, are you still breathing? Sori asked, but the man wasn't responding. Thankful for her enhanced hearing, she could easily pick up a faint heartbeat and some shaky breaths. She quickly started inspecting him, using what little medical training she could remember to try and figure out what to do here. Okay, he's still alive, but he ain't gonna last long. Fuck, what the hell do I do? Meanwhile, Kira decided to go on the offensive and rushed over to her father, pushing Sheena's father out of the way as she jumped onto the dead whale Nomu and confronted her father. Her father glared at her as he rubbed his throat. One of the weaknesses of his quirk was that each time he used it, it hurt his throat and left him unable to use it again for a while. The more he used it, the more his throat was damaged, and the longer he wouldn't be able to use it. Of course, this was something Kira was very aware of. Her father tried in vain to yell at her, but one of Kira's vectors had already grabbed onto his throat and lifted him into the air. You know, father, sometimes I'd think about killing you. I never thought I'd ever really do it, Kira said as her vector squeezed down on his throat. But now I'm wondering why it seemed so hard. Just as Kira's vector was about to crush the man's throat, Kira felt some resistance, and suddenly she lost control of it for a moment, and the vector released Kira's father, leaving him crumpled on the ground gasping for air. Are you serious right now? Kira shouted as she used another vector to try and grab her father, only for another vector to grab that one and stop it. We don't need to kill him. Just knock him unconscious or something, Knees demanded. And why the hell should I do that? Kira shouted. Every terrible thing that's ever happened in my life. Every person we killed is because of him and that horrible woman over there. Why should they be allowed to live? Because I don't want to be a killer anymore. Knees yelled back. You're not a killer. That's why I let you have control. Kira hissed. But right now, someone needs to die. So I'm going to take control and do what I do best. Kill. Kira's horns grew as she wrestled control from Knees and shot her vectors out at her father. No. Knees shouted as she pushed the vectors forward, past their father. Their horns continued to grow to full size, and their vectors became visible as they started flailing around wildly. Aga! Knees hissed as pain racked throughout their body, and she fell to her hands and knees. Their conflict causing their psychic power to go out of control and begin wreaking havoc on their own body. Cut it out. You cut it out. Knees countered. While the two fought, Sheena flew around her father, dodging his attacks. Such a disappointment, so much wasted potential. If only you'd have been born a boy from the start. Then you'd have understood. Sheena's father shouted as he tried to punch his airborne daughter. Understand what? That you're selfish and stupid. Sheena taunted. Grrrr. Sheena's father growled as his face went red. Don't you dare talk back to Dash. Before he could finish, Sheena shoved her scythe right into his mouth. Got ya. Shing. Sheena cut into the side of his mouth, knowing that it wasn't reinforced by his quirk like his skin was. Her father instantly went limp and fell onto the sand with a hard thump. Sheena breathed a sigh of relief. She'd easily be able to remove the metal and glass her father had on him before he woke up, so even if they were stuck here, he wouldn't be any threat to them. But that could be done later. There was still one last thing to take care of. Sheena flew up and looked down at the top of the dead whale Nomo, and her eyes went wide. Kira was still writhing in pain as her vectors flailed about. All the while, Kira's father got back to his feet and looked down at his daughter, getting ready to unleash another shout. No. Knees, watch out. Sheena flew down towards them, but she knew she wouldn't make it in time. Kira's father opened his mouth, ready to kill his helpless daughter. Crockham. In a flash of lightning, Raiden appeared, crocheted down behind Kira's father, with his sword between the man's legs. A second later, Kira's father split in two, both halves collapsing onto the ground. Hostile neutralized. Miznes appears to be suffering from a kind of quirk overload. Immediate extraction advised. Raiden said as he observed the area. Mr. Raiden. Sheena shouted as she flew over to him. What happened? How did you get in here? Sheena, nice to see you're all right. After doing some tests, we tried sticking a piece of AKA into the Nomu that sent you here. After she took control, and we saw it was safe, I was sent to figure things out and neutralize all hostiles I encountered. Raiden explained as he looked over the desert filled with dead Nomu and unconscious/dead enemies. Looks like we were a bit late. I think that was the last one, but we need to move fast. Mr. Tokoshi got hit bad. He might die, Sheena explained. Got it. Immediate medical attention is needed. All hostiles were seemingly neutralized. Retrieve with caution, Raiden reported. You know, out of all the foods you could pick for our meeting, I did not expect pizza, Izuku said to Giza as they sat on the couches in his office, with 2 boxes of pizza on the table between them. 1. I'm not so above it all that I can't enjoy good food. 2. Good food is a great way to detract from stress. And 3. Tomatoes are very good for one's blood pressure. Something which you like is having issues at the moment, Giza said as he served both of them. Well, you're not wrong. Izuku sighed, trying to keep his irritation from leaking into his voice. But I would like to get to the point. How long until the hand is ready? Likely a few more months, Giza said. Like I said, I won't compromise on the training. And there's nothing I can do to make this go faster? Izuku said, his fist clenching so hard his knuckles turned white. Not at the moment, no? Time is what is required, Giza answered. Now, tell me, do you understand the intention of this most recent attack? Izuku took a breath, trying to calm himself before answering. They're trying to make me make a mistake. It was unlikely that the MLA team could kill those 4 kids and his bodyguards, even with the weak Nomus they sent. But despite all that, it sure did a good job of making Izuku absolutely furious. Right now, Izuku is on top of the world. But the higher you are, the more it hurts when you trip. If Izuku started making rash decisions in an attempt to get rid of the MLA faster, it could lead to things going very poorly for him, giving the MLA the opportunity they need. So Izuku needed to keep calm and not try to do anything rash, which was far easier said than done, given the absolute fury stirring inside him. As much as I don't want to play into their plans, I can't simply wait for them to keep attacking me either. Izuku said, I need to at least take down their main base of operations. Or rather, I just need to find it. Unfortunately, all our new prisoners had their minds messed with before they attacked. When we searched their brains, all the useful information had been scrubbed out. I see you've skipped past the small issue of their human rights, Giza pointed out. Izuku sighed yet again. At this point, I'm deeming it a necessary evil. Do you disagree? No. I am simply taking note. These things should be given the proper amount of weight and retrospective. Geezer explained. That aside, what action do you plan on taking in reference to finding out the MLAS location? I could go and search for them myself. However, that would slow the training of my men. Yes, I'm aware. I have something else planned, Izuku said as he took a bite of pizza. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX knock on her door. 1 second. She finished up with her wig, taking a look in the mirror to make sure everything was good before responding. Come in. Izuku opened the door and walked right in, smiling when he saw her. Wow, it's astonishing how good you are with makeup now. Sheena beamed with pride. Thanks. So how are you feeling? Izuku asked, taking a seat on her bed and hunching over so he could talk to her eye to eye. Sheena wanted to say she was fine, but Izuku likely wouldn't be satisfied with that. Although to be fair, she didn't really know how to feel. She definitely wasn't as shaken up as she probably should be. How is Mr. Tokoshi? Sheena asked. She'd heard he'd survive, but that was all she heard. Thankfully, he'll be fine after a couple of weeks. With his quirk and modern-day technology, he won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Izuku reassured her. And how's Fuku? Sheena asked. Oh well, she's shaken. To be sure, not too badly, since she was passed out / non-existent during the attack. At worst, she's just not going to be going outside the house grounds for a while. Izuku sighed. Well, it could have been worse, Sheena said with a forced smile, although her saddened tone gave her away completely. I'm sorry that I made us go outside. It's not your fault. I'm the one that should have been more vigilant. As your guardian, I shouldn't have been so lax while the MLA were still out there. Izuku said, giving Sheena a reassuring hug. And most of all, the blame should be laid across the people who would dare attack children just trying to enjoy their day. Sheena stayed quiet for a while, with a thoughtful expression on her face, as she mulled over something. Something on your mind? You know you can ask me anything. Izuku reminded her. I won't judge. Am I a bad person? Sheena finally asked, giving Izuku a confused and desperate look. Clearly afraid of being judged, but needing answers nonetheless. My mom died and I just don't care. And it's not just that, all the people that I killed, I feel bad about that, but not as much as I should. I don't have any nightmares or feel like I have to try and make up for it. At least not that much. I feel more guilty about not feeling that guilty. Is that bad? Izuku took a second to consider his response. Do you know that killing people is bad? Sheena nodded. Well, then there shouldn't be a problem, Izuku told her. At the end of the day, guilty feelings by themselves don't do anything to help anyone. Sometimes they can drive people to do helpful or good things for the people they hurt, but most of the time, guilt doesn't help, it only hurts. Hurts you, to be specific. That's not to say it's bad to feel guilty, but your level of guilt is about as much as you need, considering what happened. You mean the murders? Sheena asked. Yes, of course, you did kill people, but at the same time, you didn't really have a choice. Izuku pointed out. You were forced into the life of a child assassin by parents that would gladly end your life if you disobeyed and had the backing of a massive and dangerous organization. Sure, you could have refused to kill people, but who knows what would have happened to you? And as a scared child, it's unreasonable to lay the blame for their deaths onto you. And as for your mother, well, you didn't need to feel guilty or sad about a bad woman who never loved you getting killed by someone else. But that's not normal. Most people would feel bad, right? Sheena asked, still not entirely convinced. Not always. People react to different things differently, Izuku explained. Most people who went through what Kei went through wouldn't be acting like she does. Do you think Kei's bad for being the way she is? Sheena's eyes went wide. She never thought about it like that. Kei was weird. No doubt. Nobody should be able to go through the horrors of the world the way she did and come out literally unfazed. To be perfectly honest, that part of Kei kinda terrified her. But never once had she thought that that was particularly bad. Weird and freaky, but not bad. Oh, looks like you get it now. Izuku smiled as he saw the realization in her eyes. Now then, why don't I let you practice makeup on me? The stress has been awful for my looks after all. Sheena giggled at that obvious attempt to make her feel better. Being obvious didn't mean it didn't work though. Izuku walked up to the infirmary and took a deep breath. Reports about Kira's behavior during the attack were not encouraging. Being perfectly honest, he'd never really known what he needed to do with Kira and Ni's. To be fair, no one did. Because while her condition was similar to DID, it wasn't that. It was something utterly unique to her that was difficult to analyze due to lack of information, as well as the unique nature of their brain. Why do psychics always have to be so difficult to deal with? Izuku lamented. Not that that makes me love you guys any less, Yonda. Izuku had no way to know if Yonda was actually listening, so he had to add that part whenever he thought something like this, which was more than he would have liked. Alright, let's look at the damage. Izuku stepped into the infirmary and found Vera sitting down, seemingly waiting for him, with a very disparaging expression. Ms. Nikitina. Mr. Midoriya. Vera sighed and looked up at Izuku. The girl is not doing well. Her body is fine, but let me explain in full. After we sedated her and brought her here, she woke up the next day and immediately began to flail her body and vectors wildly, seemingly unable to control herself. I sedated her again, and she has yet to wake up since. Even though sedatives have long since worn off, the girl has illness I cannot fix. Izuku grit his teeth and looked over to Nisa's unconscious body on the nearby bed. It seemed like it was time for drastic action. So, can any of you tell me what's happening? Izuku asked his gathered group. Rin and Mai had come to Izuku's office at his call and had both already been informed about the issue. While our tests haven't returned anything concrete, so we're mostly going off of theories, Mai said. It appears, up until now, Kira held undisputed control over their body. Nis was controlling the body, but Kira could at any point take over, and Nis would be powerless to do anything. Rather, her consciousness would recede and only reawaken at Kira's discretion. However now, Nis seems to have gained equal levels of control. And now since the two are at odds, they're not able to control the body properly. And since that's the case, neither are they controlling the body, leaving it in a comatose state. Alright, so what if we gave them separate bodies like we did with Fu and Fuhai? Izuku asked, nervousness and desperation clear in his voice. My side. Unfortunately, there's too many risks. Fu's quirk gave us some leeway to do otherwise dangerous things, and we're not even sure how similar their situation even is to Fu's. It's far too reckless to even entertain that option. Rin finished sipping his coffee. Well then, if the easy option is off the table, as it often is, I guess we just have to deal with this the hard way. I normally never go into people's minds without their permission, but I think you and I both agree that this is a special occasion. Izuku nodded. Alright, let's begin. It was rare to find a Christian church in a city, but for Daika City, it was important. The church itself was fairly large, especially for one in Japan, as well as fairly well maintained. And inside this church were dozens of people, all seated and looking up at one man at a podium. Borozagupu, my fellow believers, thank you all for coming. I know things have been hard after our leader was taken from us by that blasphemer Midoriya, but I thank you all for holding strong in these dark times. Gupu said to his audience, as you know, we recently managed to rid ourselves of 4 traitors, whose greed and arrogance caused 2 of God's children to go astray. Of course, these traitors could not be so useful as to deal with the issues they created, nor deal with Midoriya's underlings. But as was God's will, those 4 have been punished. Everyone gave a short applause, looking pleased to hear this news. Now, I know some of you have doubts about us resurrecting the dead so that they may aid us against Midoriya. Gupu addressed, but you have nothing to worry about. Think about it. Do you think that we would be able to take back people who have entered the kingdom of heaven or the depths of hell without God's approval? No, of course not. This is not some blasphemous science, but the work of God. Muttering broke out among the people, as a general aura of approval came from it, many seeming to have accepted the man's words. The believers here are few and far between, which is why God has given us the means to call upon the fallen, to aid us. Gupu preached. And not just that, but soon we will be able to create a new life. And with this power, we will create a divine warrior that will end that devil Midoriya once and for all. Yeah, hi. The crowd cheered. Then after we drag him to God to face judgment, we will bring judgment down upon all of Japan, and then the world. Gupu shouted. Yeah. They continued to cheer, standing up and giving a hearty applause. Meanwhile, in the back of the church, fellow council member Masuda Yoso watched things play out. So this is the meta cult. Masuda thought. The meta cult wasn't its own religion. Rather, it was a branch of Christianity, although many other religions had similar branches. When quirks first appeared, everything was changed. And of course, the religious scene was no different, as every religious leader had to have some kind of stance on quirks. These stances were typically either quirks that were a gift from God or whatever deity the religion worshipped, or that every person with a quirk was actually a demon, or made a deal with a demon, or something of the like. The latter stance was initially popular as people led witch hunts against people's quirks. Burning, stoning, hanging, all that jazz. However, as with most anti-quirk sentiments, it died down when people realized that the ratio of quirked births to non-quirked births was quickly shifting. And it completely died out once the world was being run by people with quirks, and most of the quirkless people were dead. This left most religions stating that quirks were a gift from the divine. Of course, much like any religious explanation for pretty much anything, this explanation had holes in it. Namely, if quirks were a gift from God, why were they given out so blatantly fairly? Why were some quirks worse than others? Why were some quirks just flat-out detrimental? Why were some still born quirkless? And of course, the answer most religious leaders gave for these questions was some variation of, God works in mysterious ways. This was not the case for the meta cult. They believed that not only were quirks a gift from God, but that those who received powerful quirks were chosen by God to hold power over those with weaker ones. To the meta cult, if you were born with a weak quirk or quirkless, you were born to obey the wills of your betters. So long as those betters didn't act against God's will, of course. It was only natural then that this cult's ideals aligned very nicely with the Meta Liberation Army, and thus was absorbed into it. The cult became a prominent part of the army throughout its life, which is why Gupu, the most prominent priest of the cult, was chosen to be part of the council. Zealots. Masuda rolled her eyes. Hypocritical fools. Their lucky Gupu is such a valuable mad scientist, or I would have rid us of such ridiculous liabilities long ago. Still, it would be painful if he were to do anything rash. I'll need to keep a very close eye on him and his ilk. Black. Everything was black. It was strange, being asleep, yet unable to wake up, because the moment she opened her eyes, she'd feel Kira fighting her. The two had struggled for a while, but eventually, they'd ended up in this state, with neither of them having control, their body laying motionless. She could still feel Kira's will, waiting, expecting these to back down at any moment. Well, she'd be sorely disappointed. Then, without warning, sight returned to her, and she found herself in some kind of purple cafe with a strange girl staring at her. Welcome to the Velvet Room, Lavenza said, giving them a small bow and a comforting smile. Huh. Nise looked down at herself and moved her body around, finding that she could do so without issue now. What the dash? What's going on? Nise turned to her right and found that she was sitting next to herself. The other girl turned to look at her, and her eyes widened. What? How is Nise? Kira. Nise glared at her counterpart, and her counterpart glared back. I'm guessing you didn't do this? Kira growled. No, that was me. The two looked behind them and saw Izuku and Ren standing there. Izuku in particular had a very displeased expression that made both of them deflate a bit. I used my quirk to bring you both into this space, so we could all have a little chat, Ren explained. Kira, I've been indulging your lack of cooperation up until now, but it's gotten to the point where I can't overlook this anymore. We're going to talk and figure out what everyone wants to do and how we're going to move forward. Izuku said sternly. Nise looked over at Kira, who was looking down at the ground, fist clenched with a frustrated expression. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. Kira cursed as she tried to summon her vectors to thrash the cafe. However, instead of that happening, the cafe shook, as if being rocked by an earthquake. What the hell? Rin shouted as he struggled to stand. Her psychic powers are disrupting the link between our minds. Lavenza explained as she held onto the counter. Can I stop her? Nise asked, trying to activate her own vectors. Don't. You'll likely just make things worse. Lavenza explained. Izuku walked over to Kira, struggling to stay upright as he did, but he did make it over to her and put his hands on her shoulders. That's enough, Kira. Do you really think that any of this will help? That this will lead to your happiness? I'm begging you, please just talk to us. Please. Kira looked up at Izuku, gazing into his eyes. There was no real anger or judgment in his gaze, just kindness and concern. Concern for her. Kira felt her hold over her vectors slip as her will shattered and the shaking stopped. The former assassin sniffled and looked back down at the flower. Fine, do whatever you want. I don't care anymore. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you, Izuku said, bringing Kira in for a hug, which the girl neither broke away from nor embraced, simply hanging limply in his arms while silently crying. All right, let's take a bit to calm down, shall we? How about some food? Lavinza offered. Curry. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Ni's sitting together, much to their displeasure, with Izuku and Rin sitting across from them. Okay, let's start with why you two are fighting in the first place. Izuku asked, continuing to keep a stern yet gentle tone. I was trying to tell you what happened during the fight. Kira was going to let Shina die. Ni's tattled, pointing at her counterpart as she did so. And she tried to stop me from telling you. I didn't think we could save her and win the battle. And she was fine anyway. Kira shouted back, glaring at her doppelganger. And it's not like I wanted her to die, but I didn't want to die either. You didn't even think about saving her. And then you tried to kill someone when you didn't need to. Monster. Nis hissed. Idiot. Kira shouted back. Maybe we should have died. It'd be better than sharing a body with you. Nis shouted. Slap. Kira immediately slapped Nis across the face as a furious expression took over her face. You ungrateful brat. You decided to stay awake during the fight. And you decided to keep asking about me. If you just stopped and did what I told you, you wouldn't have learned about me. And you could have just kept being happy. But you just had to ruin everything. So you don't need to exist anymore. Slam. Enough. Izuku shouted, slamming his fist on the table to get both of them to stop. Both girls immediately flinched and fearfully looked over at Izuku, to find him scowling at them more intensely than he ever had before, causing them to promptly shut up. I don't want to hear either of you say anything like that ever again. Izuku scolded. He was holding back a lot of his anger, but a good chunk of it leaked into his voice. Am I clear? Yes. Both girls said at the same time, looking deeply ashamed. Izuku took a moment to breathe and calm himself before he spoke again. First of all, Kira, there was no need to be so concerned about Nis telling me about what happened during the battle. I don't blame you for what you did. What? Both Nis and Kira shouted out in disbelief, their eyes wide and their mouths hanging open. Nis, I appreciate your devotion to your siblings and your desire to keep them safe, as well as the bravery it takes to be willing to risk your life for them, Izuku assured her. But you cannot blame others for lacking that same bravery. Dying is a terrifying thing, and asking someone, especially a child, to risk that is at best unreasonable. Imagine asking Fuku to risk her life to save someone. Would you be angry at her if she was too scared to do so, even if she really wanted to? That's. Nis went silent, looking very distressed at how things were panning out. And Kira, please don't be too harsh on Nis. She was just as afraid as you were. Izuku explained. The fear of losing loved ones can be just as bad as the fear of losing your life. Nis probably desperately wanted to save Shina, and from her perspective, you took the ability to do so away from her. That feeling of powerlessness and fear probably caused her to say some things she didn't really mean. Even now. Both girls glanced at each other with an uneasy look. Most of the edge was gone, but it was clear that there was still a good amount of hostility between them. So then, with that addressed, let's dig into the real issue, Rin said. Nis, why do you hate Kira so much? As she's a killer. Nis shouted, somewhat weakly. But you don't hate Shina for that, because you know she didn't have a choice. And the same thing goes for Kira. Rin pointed out. No, let's be honest. The reason you hate her is because you think her being a former assassin means that you are a former assassin. Nis cringed hard, looking like she was on the verge of tears. She went silent, not wanting to confirm what Rin had said, but being completely unable to deny it. I want to make this clear. You are not a killer. You likely didn't even exist back when Kira was killing people, and you definitely didn't kill anyone. Rin explained. You and Kira share a body, yes. But it's clear you have a will of your own. You can make your own choices. And as such, whatever Kira does not reflect on you. Not to mention, as we discussed, Kira didn't really have a choice in the matter in the first place. So even if what she did reflect on you, you still couldn't be blamed for what happened. I know that, but it doesn't feel like that, Nee said as she looked down at her own two hands. Her body had been used to kill people. Even if it wasn't her. Even if the person who actually did the killing did it because they had no choice. Even despite all that, the idea of living in a killer's body made her want to vomit. What's so hard to understand? You're innocent. Innocent. That's the point of you. Kira hissed, frustration and anger pouring out of her. Izuku was about to speak up, but Rin put a hand on his shoulder. The two shared a few looks before Rin continued. Kira, let's make sure I have everything straight. While Nees and you are separate people, you do feel what Nees feels and experience what she experiences while she is in control. And since you believe Nees to be nicer, more innocent, and someone people would like to be around, you've been using her to experience things like friendship and companionship, while trying to keep her ignorant of your past. Because that would make her, and by extension you, less happy. Pretty much, Kira grumbled, not liking one bit that she'd been figured out so easily. And you believe that would be okay? Rin asked her. It would have been fine if she did what I told her. All she had to do was enjoy her time with her family, forget about the past, and let me do what needed to be done if we ever needed to fight, and it would have been better for both of us. Kira insisted, crossing her arms and glaring at Nees, who in turn glared back. Nees was about to say something, but Rin raised his hand up, signaling her to stop and to let him finish. Despite what you say about benefiting from the situation, you mostly did this for your own benefit, did you not? Rin inquired. Kira stayed silent, but of course, the answer was written plainly on her face. So then, let's sum this up. You possibly created someone to use a tool for your own benefit, held complete control over them, and insisted that they would be better off obeying you without question. Rin surmised. Does this now sound similar to what your parents did with you? And then the room went completely silent. Kira's face shifted, going from a look of contemplation to absolute horror to crestfallen acceptance. Their heads sagging and tears brimming out of the corners of her eyes. It doesn't matter. Of course, I did something like that. I'm a bad girl. And now we've reached the root of the issue. Kira, we've talked about this. The fault for all those assassinations lies on your parents, not you. Rin told her. They all died for nothing. Kira spoke softly. I would have killed as many people as they asked me to if it meant that they would love me. But they never would. Never. Tears started dripping from her eyes, running down her cheeks before dropping onto the floor. And I wasn't stupid. I knew what I was doing. I knew I was hurting people. And I always knew they'd never love me the way I loved them. I just didn't want to believe it. So I kept hurting people, for nothing. I killed them for no reason. I'm a bad girl. An evil girl. You would have been killed if you stopped. Izuku pointed out. Who cares? Kira shouted, her screams punctuated by the shaking of the velvet room. I should have just ripped out their stupid throats and died. No one would have missed me. The room went silent once again, the only sound being Kira's soft cries. After a few moments, Rin spoke up once again. Kira, every time Mies is in danger, you come out to make sure you two are safe. Despite the fact that you very obviously didn't want to be in control. If you truly didn't care about your life, you wouldn't have done that, would you? Once again, Kira stayed silent. Kira, you want to live. You want to experience love, family, and happiness. And you deserve it. But first, you have to let go of that excuse. Rin told her. The excuse of being a bad girl. But I am, Kira argued. Putting aside your past, being bad is not a thing that you are. It's a path you choose to go down. A path you can choose to keep going down or abandon at any time. Rin explained. But when you tell yourself that it's the only path you can take, it makes it easier to keep going down that path. When you tell yourself that you're a bad girl, it's because it makes doing bad things easier. Again, Kira stayed silent, squirming uncomfortably as she took in Rin's words. When someone wants to do something or doesn't want to do something, they often label themselves as something and use that to justify their decisions, Rin explained. I'm a bad cook, so it's okay to just eat out all the time. I'm not smart, so why bother studying? I'm an alcoholic, so it's only natural to drink to an unhealthy degree. I'm a bad person, So of course I'm going to do bad things. Tell me, while you were doing those bad things, did you ever tell yourself that? Did it make things simpler and easier for you? Aye. Kira could distinctly recall that being the case for many of her actions. But the truth of the matter is, regardless of how true those things are, or once were, those labels are almost irrelevant. Rin stated, no matter who you are capable of change. You can get better at cooking, you can get smarter, you can stop drinking, and you can be a better person. For some people, these things can be harder or easier. But you can do it if you decide to make a change and work for it. Kira, please look at me, Izuku said. Lavenza snapped her fingers, and suddenly Izuku and Nize swapped places, much to Kira and Nize's shock. Izuku grabbed Kira's shoulders, and Kira found herself looking at Izuku eye to eye. I don't think you're a bad girl. Yes, you did many terrible things, but most of those things were outside your control. Yes, you did consciously choose to do bad things even when you had control. You've made mistakes, but those can be corrected, and you can move on from them. Izuku told her. Kira, tell me, did all those things you felt when Nize was in control feel as nice as when I hugged you and you let you sleep next to me that night? No, Kira admitted. That's because that hug was meant for you and Nize. Not just Nize. Even if you feel what she feels, you are not Nize. And if you choose to live life the way you were, all you'll ever do is experience love that is meant for someone else. And that's not what you want, is it? Izuku asked rhetorically. You want to be loved as yourself. You want to live your own life. And you can do that. No one is stopping you, except for yourself. Kira, I'm begging you. Choose to be better. Please, it's the only way you can be truly happy. I'm scared. Kira cried. I don't know how to be good. All I've ever done is bad. I don't know if I can dash. I know you can. Izuku interrupted her, with a voice full of gentle affirmation. His eyes full of determination that helped reassure the small girl before him. So long as you try, then you can. Sometimes you may not understand certain things, or you may make mistakes. But that's okay because as your guardian, I am always here to teach, guide, and forgive you. And not just me, Achiko, and the other kids too. Some may be wary of you, but they know you suffered, and they're not willing to let you suffer anymore. So will you make that choice? To be better. Yes. I'll try. Kira sobbed as she finally caved. She rushed in and wrapped her arms around Izuku while she sobbed into his chest, and Izuku naturally hugged her back. SHSSSH. It's okay. Izuku whispered as he embraced her. They stayed like this for a while, until eventually Kira's sobs subsided, and they separated. Kira, before we move on, there is something we have to do. Izuku told her firmly. There's someone you wronged, of your own free will. And you need to apologize for that. Kira looked over at Nize. The girl with her face was wearing a rather confused expression. Emotionally confused, that is. Kira took a deep breath. As she got ready to make the first step. I'm sorry. I was wrong to try to control you like that. Please forgive me. Okay, Nize said quietly. Kira's eyes widened. Just like that? Why you forgive me that easily? I'm still a little angry, but you're not who I thought you were, Nize admitted. I thought you were a scary, heartless killer. But you're actually not like that at all. And you're just as scared and confused as I was this whole time. You've been through a lot of terrible things. And so I don't want to hate you anymore. If you're going to try and be better, then I guess we can get along. We have to share a body after all. I thank you, Kira said sincerely. Good job, you just took the first step, Izuku told her, giving Kira a pat on the back. And now it's time to take the next few steps, Rin said. Because now we need to figure out how controlling your body is going to work from here on out. Are you two ready to work together? Kira and Nize shared a look. One that contained a bit of hesitance and doubt, but also understanding, and a willingness to move forward. Yes. So I've heard you're wondering what you can do for fun now that you've decided to live your own life, Kyoka said, as she once again sat on the other side of her own little desk, with none other than Kira sitting across from her. Well, you've come to the right place. I didn't come to you. You pulled me in here. And how do you even know that? Kira asked, feeling a little weirded out by Kyoka's sudden invasiveness. Me and Yonda talk. Kyoka shrugged. Anyway, I've already been making plans for how to. Kyoka stopped for a second, before taking out her script and rereading it. Integrate. That's the word. I've been making plans on how to integrate you, for when you decided to start being around more. What if that never happened? Kira pouted. It was always going to happen. No way you could be happy watching someone else live your life. Kyoka said. And here at the Midoriya Foundation, happiness is mandatory, and you will follow the rules. I don't like this girl. Kira thought. She's a bit much. Niz admitted. So first let's talk. What did you like to do back before you came here? Kyoko asked. Nothing, Kira answered blankly. I either studied, trained, or went on missions. I didn't do anything aside from that. I couldn't do anything aside from that. And I never liked doing any of them. Okay, well at least we know what you don't like, Kyoka said as she took out a piece of paper and started writing on it. So did you hate it because you were being forced to do it, or because you just didn't like doing any of those things? I didn't like murdering people. Kira deadpanned, letting a bit of annoyance leak into her voice. And the training and studying was all for the sake of murdering people. All right, Kyoka said as she continued writing. Well, is there anything you thought looked fun while you were watching Misa's adventures? Well, I know what I don't want to do. Sitting down watching TV all day and cuddling pillows with fake girls on them. Kira smirked. You take that back. They're real to me. Niz shouted. I was just joking. Or was that too far for a joke? I really can't tell. Kira frowned. It's fine, I guess. So long as you don't mean it. Niz huffed. So you're not someone who likes sitting around all day. Got it, Kyoka surmised. Kira looked over at the paper Kyoku was writing on and scowled. Your handwriting is awful. So's your personality, but I was trying to be polite by not bringing it up, Kyoka said her cutesy, polite tone, but there was a bit of annoyance in her voice too. Also, I'm 6, what did you expect? You're 6. Kira's eyes widened at that revelation. I thought you were older with the way you talk. Kyoka stuck her chest out with pride. Thank you very much. That's the first good thing to come out of your mouth today. Kira felt her annoyance flare up. But I guess that explains why you're so short. Moving on, Kyoka hissed. So, I already have an idea of what you might want to do. Let's try a few things, shall we? And why should I just go along with whatever you're asking? Kira asked. Did you have something better to do? Kyoko asked. Fine, lead the way, Kira grumbled. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Kira to the backyard, and with the help of Kiba, they set up a basketball court. Well then, are you ready to eat whatever the floor of this court is made of? Kiba boasted as she bounced the ball in her hand. Do any of us know how to play basketball? Kira asked. Nah, but we don't need to worry about that. Let's just focus on getting the ball in the net. Kiba shrugged. First to 10 hoops wins. Very well. Kira sighed. Nice was being charitable and allowing her more control of their body, while she figured out what exactly she wanted to do with her time. It would be rude not to take advantage of that. Immediately, Kira used her vectors and snatched the ball out of Kiba's hands before throwing it into the basket. That's 1 point, Kira, Kyoka called. Hey, wait a minute, I wasn't ready. Kiba protested, using the ball's shadow to create a hand before bringing the ball back to her. Yeah, that did kind of feel like cheating. Nice agreed. That sounds like a you problem, Kira replied smugly. Kiba's face became enshrouded with shadow as her mouth twisted into a dark grin. Oh, so we're playing that game. Then Kiba summoned more shadows, which quickly surrounded Kira before creating an orb of shadow around her. Humph, Kiba smirked before throwing the ball towards the net, only for the ball to get caught by one of Kira's vectors and tossed into the opposite net. What? Kiba gasped, looking at the ball in shock. Second point, Kira, Kyoka called. Kiba scowled and dispelled her shadow capsule, freeing Kira. How the heck did you do that? Did you not know that my vectors can move through objects? Kira explained with a teasingly smug expression. And as a former assassin, naturally I can work without having to see. Grrrr. Okay, no more games. Kiba said as she brought the ball back to her using her shadows. Kiba summoned more shadows and formed them into humanoid shapes. Some of the shadows ran behind Kira, while some went over to the hoop. Kiba rushed past Kira and jumped over to her hoop, ready to slam the ball in. But Kira put one of her vectors over the net, so when the ball got slammed, it just landed in the hand of the vector. Kira then launched the ball over towards the opposite hoop. But then one of Kiba's shadow teammates jumped up, caught it, and tossed it back over to Kiba. Or at least that was the intent. The shadow ended up tossing the ball out of bounds in a completely different direction. PFT. Kira snickered as Kiba's face went red. Shut up. You try puppeting multiple things at once. Kiba hissed. Plus the sun's up, and it's making me sloppy. Sure, whatever makes you feel better, Kira said with a smirk. Oh, you are so going down, Kiba said as she recovered the ball. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Both girls were covered in sweat and trying to catch their breath after both putting their all in the match. Huh, 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 I won. In your face, Kiba said, giving the other girl a toothy grin. Just barely. Kira scowled. Don't be so smug. That's rich coming from you. Ni said. So did you have fun? Kyoko asked. I mean, it's better than assassination. Kira sighed. But I wouldn't say it's super fun. And now I'm all sweaty and tired. All right, so you don't like this kind of thing. Kyoko took out a notebook and wrote that down. Okay, let's try something else tomorrow. I have an idea I think you're really gonna like. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX house and found Kyoku and Sanson waiting for her. "What are we doing today?" "Exploring," Sanson said with an uncomfortably large grin. "You're just going to take a walk around the forest, explore some caves, and look for gems," Kyoku explained. "Maybe you'll help her out with an art piece if you feel like it. Just relax and have a good time." "Okay, that doesn't sound so bad," Kira said. "Doesn't sound exciting either, but I guess I'll try it." "Okay, let's go," Sanson said before slithering into the forest. "Have fun, and take this," Kyoku said, handing her a backpack. "What's in it?" Kira asked as she took the bag. "Don't worry about that. Just catch up with her before she's out of sight." Go, Kyoku urged her. Kira just shrugged and ran after Sanson, figuring whatever was inside was probably fine. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Sanson leading the way towards their unknown destination. "I'm bored," Nice said. "I'm actually enjoying myself," Kira revealed, much to her counterpart's surprise. "What, how? We aren't doing anything," Nice gasped. We're walking. We're walking in a nice forest, surrounded by lovely trees and animals. The sounds and sights are all just very relaxing," Kira said. Kira was pretty much always keenly aware of their surroundings. It was part of her training as an assassin. She had to take in every sound, sight, and smell around her, so nothing could take her by surprise. And it was thanks to this that she found her trip through the forest rather pleasant. First of all, it was quiet. Kira wasn't a fan of noise. She'd grown up around a lot of loud noises, namely her parents' constant yelling and the sounds of people dying. So she wasn't a big fan of being around lots of noise. You can imagine how she felt about Nice becoming a drummer of all things. But she also wasn't a fan of absolute silence. It was unnatural, and it made her feel like someone was planning to ambush her. The forest had just the right amount of pleasant sounds. Birds chirping and flying through the air. Water rushing through nearby streams. Small animals rustling around on the ground and making small, cute noises. The sights were also pretty. Vibrant greens and browns, with the occasional clear blue streams breaking it up. And the sun and sky had never seemed more beautiful, coloring the ground below in a brilliant way that Kira had never stopped and considered before. The smells were pretty good too. Wood and dirt may not seem like anything special, but they had the same weird relaxing effect that everything else did. And the wind carried that smell through the forest. Speaking of the wind, it was perfect today. Present, but not forceful. A gentle breeze that rustled through the trees, and soft lead brushed her skin. That, combined with the gentle rays of the sun, made the overall feel of the walk even better. Of course, it's not like Kira had never walked through a forest before. It's just that before, she always had some mission she needed to focus on, and things to worry about. Things that kept her from appreciating the little things. But now, all she needed to worry about was relaxing. "Oh, please don't tell me you're into all that boring stuff." Nice groaned. "You can just go to sleep if you're so bored," Kira suggested. "Fine, see you later," Nice said, and a few moments later, Kira felt Nice's presence in her mind fade. And with that, Kira peacefully continued her walk, at least for the next few minutes, until Sanson suddenly stopped. "All white, we're here," Sanson said as she made a giant hand and pointed to a spot on the ground. Please smash the ground here. Sure. Kira punched the spot with her vectors as hard as she could, and the ground crumbled, revealing a large underground cavern. Huh. How did you know that was there? Small crack in the ground. Saw it when I was moving. Sanson explained. How small was that crack? Kira wondered. Sanson jumped down the hole, into the cavern, with Kira following suit, using her vectors to slow her fall, letting her land gracefully on her feet. Kira looked around and immediately felt unnerved. Around them was a large rocky opening, illuminated by the opening they'd made, and in front of them was a dark cave path. Much like silence, the dark was another thing Kira wasn't fond of. Unlike pure silence, making the room pitch black was much more achievable. As such, her parents liked to use that for training and punishments. Red vial, please, Sanson said, pointing to the backpack. Oh, sure. Kira used her vectors to take off her backpack and bring it in front of her, opened it up, and searched through it before finding a vial of red liquid. This it? Sanson nodded, before making her mouth huge and opening it up. Kira took a second to figure out what she needed to do, before realizing it and opening up the vial, before dumping the liquid in Sanson's mouth. Sanson closed her mouth, before melting into a puddle and then swirling herself around quickly turning her body green, and then she began to glow, lighting up the area around her. Huh, your body is a world of wonders, Sanson, Kira said as she stared at her newly glowing friend. Sanson went into the backpack and pulled out a small machine, before raising it into the air. The machine made a few beeping noises before a light on the machine turned green. Okay, we good, Sanson said before putting the machine back in the backpack. What did that do? Kira asked. Uses the wind to tell if the quave is deep enough, Sanson explains. Gems can only be found deep underground. If quave isn't deep, waste of time. I see. Well, then we better get walking, Kira said, realizing that their journey had only just begun. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Thankfully, Kira had gotten used to long trips, and Sanson just never got tired, so they were able to continue on their little trek without issue. Well, without major issues. Kira found that, unlike the forest, she wasn't a fan of caves. Even with Sanson's light, it was just too quiet and too dark. Sanson had expanded to cover the floor, ceiling, and walls as she moved, making her a moving wall of slime. This was so that she could see into any cracks in the cavern as she moved. This seemed to bear fruit, as suddenly Sanson stopped. "Found it, this wall," Sanson said, pointing a finger to the wall on their left. "Want me to break it open?" Kira asked, getting her vectors ready. "Yes, please." Sanson normally would have just come down here in half-acid form and meld apart the rocks, but she figured she'd let Kira help her out. Slam! Kira's vectors smashed the rock wall and started tearing it apart, ripping out the rocks and letting them fall to the floor. "Stop!" Sanson called, after a bit of digging. Kira looked into the hole she'd made and found a deposit of lime crystals, shimmering in response to Sanson's light. "Wow, you're really good at this. Never thought I'd find real gems in a real cave." "Uh-huh. Okay, let's go back," Sanson said. "Huh? Aren't we gonna mine some more crystals?" Kira asked. "Not what we came for." "You'd want like the cave white?" Sanson asked. "Oh, you noticed." Kira realized that, despite moving forward, Sanson could see behind her and was likely studying her expressions the entire time. "I'm not fond of this place, but I don't mind staying a bit longer so we can get your gems. I mean, we're already here. It's fine. Can come back later," Sanson said. "I insist. I don't want to go back empty-handed after all that walking," Kira stated. "It'd be a waste." "Okay." Sanson relented. "Let's mine." XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX changing into her pajamas. So, how is real-life Minecraft? Nice asked. Did you just wake up, right before we're about to go to sleep? Kira asked, snickering a bit at her timing. Well, I woke up earlier when you were in the cave, but I still thought it was boring so I went back to sleep. Nice explained. Fair, I guess. Well, walking through the forest was fine, but the cave wasn't pleasant. Kira explained. I guess it was kinda interesting gathering gems, but it's not something I think I'll try again. So you're the kind of person that likes going on walks, and that's it? And you say I don't do much. Ni scoffed. I talked to Kyoko after I got back. She said that I probably like more relaxing, slow activities. She's got a whole list of things lined up. Kira explained. That girl really looks up to Izuku, huh? Yeah, why wouldn't she? He's great. Ni said. Well, yeah, but they're both really different. I don't think she can be like Izuku, even if she acts like him. Kira deduced. Ni stayed silent, contemplating that thought. As much as she would have liked to refute that, there was a grain of truth there. Kyoko was a nice girl, when you got past some of her more abrasive parts, and she tried her best to be like Izuku, but she never felt the same warmth that she felt from Izuku. It was weird. Some people could be really nice, like Kyoko and Fu, but Ni's would never get the same warm feeling she got from other people like Izuku, Achiko, Kei, or Eri. She wondered why that was. Kuki strutted down the halls with a confident aura about him, and a smile on his face. He just got back from the fashion club, and Shiroku and Kano just finished designing him a whole bunch of badass dresses. Honestly, nowadays he wondered how he could stand living how he used to. Putting aside the whole, stuck in a wheelchair thing, which sucked for obvious reasons. He was just so nothing. His style was non-existent. His clothes were drab and boring, and nothing else about him had any substance. Oh, how things had changed. Now he walked about in his stylish black dress and matching dress shoes, and his makeup only enhanced the coolness of his look. His hair was, unfortunately, still too short for his liking, but it would grow in time. He made sure to use all the proper shampoos and conditioners to make sure it had grown nice and healthy. But for now, he was stuck with wigs, which were fine for the moment. And the result of all this was a feeling of power and control Kuki had never felt before. These clothes, the makeup, and the hair just brought him a sense of giddiness and confidence that he couldn't imagine living without anymore. Of course, being that they were girls' clothes, other people sometimes saw him as strange. Although no one in the house really bothered him that much about it. Most just gave him some surprised looks when they found out. It was actually the first time he'd seen his brother express so much. He wished he'd had a camera to capture the look on his face. The only person who'd really given him any grief was Ken, and he only ever made some light-hearted jabs at him and his attire. No real malice behind them. He could still fuck right off though. Soon enough he'd be able to master his look, and even make his own clothes. Life was sweet. Honestly, he didn't know what could possibly make it better. William. Suddenly, as Kuki was walking past the training room, when he heard the sound of gunfire from inside. What the heck? Kuki stopped and looked inside the training room, and found AKA along with Giza inside. AKA was using some kind of gun to fire at some targets that had been set up in the room, with Giza watching over her. Stop. Center your aim. Steady your breath, Giza told her. AKA adjusted her aim a bit before Giza told her. Fire. William. AKA shot at the target, and the dart landed on the target a bit off the bullseye of the mark yet again. Curses. AKA hissed. Yes, but you were close enough. You'll master the weapon in time, Giza told her. Don't let frustration grip your heart, lest it cause your aim to falter. Meanwhile, Kuki was just looking on in amazement. He'd obviously known about guns before. His handlers had ready access to them after all, but he'd never really gotten a good look at them before. The closest he'd gotten was barely seeing a few pistols that were still in their holsters and hearing some of the other kids being trained with them. But never once had he seen them like this. So cool, Kuki exclaimed, his eyes practically shimmering with excitement. The way it looked, the way it shot, they both just seemed so cool. Kuki quickly imagined himself holding one, and found it very much fit his aesthetic. He had to have one, or more. He'd heard there were multiple types. He'd have to look into that. But first, he'd have to convince Izuku to give him one. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX heavily. I knew you'd say that. Of course, when Kuki knew very well that Izuku might refuse his request. Izuku had a tendency of doing that. Well, with a few exceptions, probably a lot of exceptions. But still, his point stood. Guns are too dangerous for me to just give to children. Most adults aren't even allowed to own them in most countries. Izuku explained. Yes, Aka has one. But firstly, that gun is designed to shoot darts that inject pieces of herself into targets. Even if she accidentally shot someone with it, it's unlikely they would get any serious injuries. But even then, she's only allowed to use that when she's alone with a professional like Giza. And due to the way that AKA's body works, even if she accidentally shoots herself, she'll be fine even if she was using a normal gun. How dangerous can they be? It's not like I'm going to aim the gun at my face or try to shoot anyone. Kuki argued ignorantly. First of all, guns can often malfunction, causing various accidents and injuries. Second of all, bullets can do this thing called ricochet, which means sometimes when you shoot a target, the bullet will bounce around and accidentally hit someone. You'd need to be trained to make sure that doesn't happen. Look, I can send you a whole list of reasons why guns are dangerous, but long story short, my answer is no. Izuku told him. And, as I said, it's illegal for most grown adults to own one, let alone children. If people saw that I let you have one, the whole world would rightfully say I shouldn't be taking care of children. Why do you even want a gun anyway? Because it looks cool. Kuki said indignantly. It looks so cool I need one. Oh, well if it's just for looks I can get you a replica. Izuku offered. In terms of looks, they're pretty much the same as regular guns, but they don't actually fire so they're not dangerous. Kuki pondered that for a moment. On the one hand, he really liked how cool guns were when they fired, but he could tell that this was the best he was going to get. It was either this or nothing. Fine. Kuki relented. But they better look cool. I promise you, they absolutely will, Izuku assured him. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX many new interests that he'd never thought of exploring before. The first was, of course, his new love of guns. Izuku had given him a whole catalog of model guns, all of which looked awesome in their own unique way, and would all look awesome in his little hands. But that wasn't enough, he needed more. And so developed a new hobby, movie watching. Now, of course, Kuki had watched movies and TV shows before. He'd done a lot of that after he joined the family, but before he got his quirk removed. His sister would often just put random kids' shows on, and he watched them due to not having anything better to do. None of that stuff ever grabbed his interest, but with his new obsession with guns, he now had films he actually wanted to watch. War films, spy flicks, John Wick type stuff. And it was awesome. Bam, bam, bam. Speaking of John Wick, they were watching one of the movies from its sequel series, Baba Yaga. So cool. How did he even fire so many rounds that quickly? Kuki asked as he watched the movie in awe. That's called burst fire. It lets even smaller guns shoot rounds really quickly with only one press of the trigger. AKA explained. Cool. Cuckoo cooed. Oh, look at that knife movement. That definitely wouldn't work in real life, but it looks sweet. Himiko cheered. Yes. Stab. Shoot. Punch. Kill. Kyoka cheered. Stab. Shoot. Punch. Kill. The rest of them cheered. Of course, new interests had led to gaining new friends. AKA had already been interested in guns before he was, and although now her interest wasn't as strong as his, they still managed to bond quite well over their new shared love of firearms. Himiko had brought him into the lovely world of knives. Himiko seemed to like any kind of bladed weapon, but for whatever reason Kuki only really liked knives. They just fit his aesthetic better. But of course, Himiko also had a not-so-small appreciation for guns as well, and the bloody spectacle they created. And Kyoku was just an appreciator of violence. Funny enough, these three, despite their interest, never got any model guns. They just hadn't known they existed. Because, unlike Kuki, none of them had been stupid enough to ask Izuku for a gun. Naturally, after they found out, they would choose to amend that error, and further bonding ensued. Furthermore, all those military movies had awakened a few more things in him. First of all, was a love for the military aesthetic, which meant he could add even more to his wardrobe. It's not that he wanted to wear military clothes. Those just didn't suit him. It's more that he wanted to take certain parts of that aesthetic. Something that Kano and Shino were more than happy to help him with. All right, so what do you think? Shiruku asked as she finished tailoring the finer details, and Kano brought over a mirror so Kuki could look at themselves. This newest dress was still black like most of his clothes were. It was his favorite color after all, but other than that it was very different. The material the dress was made of was harder and heavier material, and it was adorned with a lot of metal. A belt, metal buttons, badges that adorned the left side of his chest, and stars placed on the ends of his sleeves and along his folded collar. It also sported a tie, which was a bit annoying, but it looked great so he wouldn't complain. Perfect. Excellent work, as always, girls. Kuki grinned, holding up his hand and giving both girls a high five for their efforts. Another interest that was awoken was, strangely enough, history. Specifically, he'd become curious about past wars and their tactics, things that often got glossed over in actual history class. This had nothing to do with fashion, it was just something he found interesting. So why do people keep attacking Russia in winter? Kuki asked as he stared at his textbook. Are they stupid? Ego, Yami answered. He was sitting next to Kuki, reading it alongside him. Smart people look dumb when they let pride control them. I'm going to use that line someday. Kuki made sure to file away that quote in the recesses of his mind. Unfortunately, history and military tactics weren't too terribly popular around here, and Yami was the only one who even remotely shared his interest in this subject. Later that night, Kuki flopped onto his bed after he finished putting on his pajamas, utterly exhausted from all the activities he did today, but also utterly satisfied with it all. Also, that exhaustion made crawling into bed feel way better than it used to back when he just sat around all day. Kuki smiled as he slowly began to drift off. Yeah, this is what living is about. This is what I've been waiting for. And with that, the boy fell asleep, more content than he'd ever been. Tinko felt renewed. As it turns out, talking about your problems with people who went through similar things worked wonders in making one feel better. Sure, most of his problems weren't exactly resolved, but he didn't feel like they were the end of the world anymore, and he actually had the will to start being proactive in his life again. And with that, Tinko noticed something odd. Had everything around the Foundation house always been so messy? And had he always been so bothered by things being messy? Well, at least it gave him something to do. And so the first thing the reinvigorated Tinko did was give his room a deep, deep cleaning. His room was rather empty, so that wasn't very hard. At least that's what he thought at first. Just sweep and pass a mop over the floor and scrub the walls a bit. Nothing too crazy. It wasn't until he started cleaning that Tinko realized the extent of his dissatisfaction. What was supposed to be a few minutes of sweeping became hours plus following up with a vacuum as he scoured every last corner of his room. The mopping itself didn't take that much longer than what he expected, but it did take way longer to learn what chemicals he had to mix into the water he used for maximum cleanliness. And then there was wiping down the walls. Oh dear, that had taken what felt like half the day. This could be blamed on Tinko's lack of experience when it came to cleaning. So as he whipped down the walls, he'd forget which parts he'd already whipped, thus causing him to wipe down certain parts twice. And then he ended up wiping down everything in the room, because as he was cleaning, he saw some dust on his dresser, and that made something inside him cringe in disgust. Again, Tinko didn't know what this was. He was never a particularly dirty kid, and he'd cleaned his room up a bit whenever it got dirty, but its dirtiness never bothered him like this. Maybe it was a trauma thing. Maybe having your entire family die made you really hate dust. He had no idea why that would be the case, but Tinko didn't understand how most things in his brain worked anymore, so, until he had a better reason for his new cleaning obsession, he'd just go with this. When he'd finally cleaned up everything and got his room in order, he came to another realization. His room still looked pretty awful. That plainness that had made cleaning the room so easy also now made it really unpleasant to look at. It needed to be overhauled. But he had absolutely no experience when it came to decorating, namely because of his father, which meant it was time to ask for help. Tinko looked out his window and saw that it had already gotten dark. He'd been cleaning the entire day. Guess I'll have to ask someone tomorrow. For now, I need a bath. He'd worked up quite a sweat cleaning as intensely as he did, and he found it quite disgusting how his sweat-soaked shirt clung to his body. Yup, I definitely need a bath. Tinko cringed. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX was scrubbing himself far harder than usual, making sure every nook and cranny of his body was clean. The weirdness continued when Tinko got out and gazed upon himself in the mirror. I really need to get a haircut, Tinko thought, wondering if there was anyone here who could do haircuts. I look like I've been living in a dumpster. After getting dressed, he headed down to the cafeteria to enjoy a meal with his friends. Never mind. Tinko was very much not enjoying himself. Today's dinner was, primarily, hamburg steak, drenched in sauce. sauce that his fellow children did not hesitate to get everywhere as they ate. Tenko watched in disgust as everyone ate, many getting sauce all over themselves and the table, with some even eating so sloppily that they got chunks of meat all over them. I think I'm just going to eat in my room, Tenko thought to himself, before taking his plate and retreating to his room, being careful not to spill anything on his way. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX watched her brunette friend get Tenko ready for his haircut. Yeah, well, we didn't have a lot of money for a barber, so we had to learn how to cut our own hair. Achiko explained as she finished setting up and pulled out a razor. I'm not like a professional or anything, but if you don't want anything fancy and you don't want to go outside, I can do the job. Thanks, Ms. Achiko, Tenko said, feeling a bit nervous about Achiko's capabilities. It's not that he didn't trust her, it's just that there was this gnawing paranoia about someone making a mess of his hair. Hey, Ms. Achiko, I suddenly feel this powerful urge to make everything cleaner. Do you know why? Well, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't say. Maybe it's just a way to make yourself feel better after everything you've been through. Achiko theorized. Yeah, like a new lease on life. Mina shrugged. Tenko sighed. Not far from the conclusion, he came to himself. Oh well, he didn't care to find out at the moment. He'd worry about that later. Kano looked around Tenko's room. All right, what do you want to paint the walls? I'm thinking maybe blue, Shiruku said as she looked Tenko over. I think brighter colors would improve your mood, so let's go for a very light blue. Yeah, that sounds good, Tenko said as he looked at the room. What about a rug? Maybe a smaller one, in the center of the room to take up that empty space and add some more color, Kuki added. When choosing people to help overhaul his room, naturally his first choice were the heads of style in the Midoriya household. These two weren't exactly interior designers, but they were more than happy to take up the challenge. All right, team, let's get to work. Start putting stuff away and getting the room ready for painting. Shiruku called. Yes, ma'am, everyone said. I probably should have asked them to help clean yesterday, Tenko thought as he continued painting the wall with a smile on his face. Because this is way better than doing this stuff on my own. Pretty much the entire fashion club was hard at work painting Tenko's room. But this wasn't the boring affair it would normally be. Music was playing, and everyone was casually conversing while they worked, livening up the process, as well as making it go far faster. I'm telling you, man, clothes make the man, Kuki said as he worked alongside Tenko. If you want to feel good, you gotta look good. I mean, guess it couldn't hurt, Tenko replied nonchalantly. But I don't think I'm suited for your kind of fashion. That's fine. Do what works for you, man, Kuki told him. Tenko stopped what he was doing for a moment and looked behind him at Fuku and Shiruku working on the opposite wall. Since Shiruku couldn't just crawl on freshly painted walls, she had to rely on ladders like most people. Kano didn't have this limitation and thus was working on painting the ceiling. Everything looks like it's going well, Tenko thought. He had to admit, it was very satisfying watching a room get painted. He watched as Fuku continued painting the wall in a little world of her own. So focused on the wall that she bumped right into Shiruku's ladder, hitting her head against the cold metal with a light thunk. Ow! Fuku recoiled, clutching her now throbbing head, leaving her entirely unaware of the can of paint that was now wobbling on the edge of the ladder. Tenko's eyes widened, and his body moved on its own as he dropped his brush and ran towards Fuku. Look out! Huh! Fuku looked up, but it was no use, as the can was already falling towards her, ready to bonk her square on the head. Tenko wouldn't make it in time. He threw his hand out in front of him, hoping to catch the can, but his fingers were the only things that managed to reach it. Splat! Suddenly the can exploded, getting paint everywhere, and covering both Tenko and Fuku in blue. Everyone stood there in shock, unsure of what just happened. The most shocking being Fuku and Tenko. I am alive, Fuku said after taking a few seconds to process what just happened. She touched the top of her head, wondering why there wasn't any pain as the can should have absolutely hit her. Instead, she felt something in her hair. Little chunks of something. She pulled them out and brought them down to her face so she could see them, and much to her shock and confusion, she found they were little bits of metal. Tiny scraps of the paint can. Fuku, are you okay? Kano asked as she flew over to the two. Why, yeah, I'm fine. I'm covered in paint, but I am not hurt, Fuku explained as she and Tenko looked down at the bits of metal in her hand. It's like the paint can exploded before it could hit me. Tenko stared at the scraps, before looking down at his blue-painted hands. It can't be. The boy looked around the room before his eyes landed on an empty can of paint. He quickly ran over to it and kneeled before bringing a shaky hand towards the can. Tenko carefully poked the can with one finger. Nothing happened. Worry and doubt started to grow inside him. Sucking in a breath, he grabbed the can, willing it to explode as hard as he could. And they can burst apart, turning into tiny scraps just like the other one. A few more moments of shock-filled silence ensued. Ha ha ha. Tenko quietly laughed, tears falling down his face as a smile slowly crawled up his face. Ah, I have a quirk. I have a quirk. Tenko sprung up, jumping into the air while raising his fist as high as he could. Yeah. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX cup of tea with his girlfriend. Yeah, the kids make wonderful gardeners, huh? Achiko said as she admired the flowers the kids had planted. Speaking to the kids, Tenko told me about something strange this morning. Yes, I heard you gave him a haircut, Izuku replied. Thank you for that, by the way. You don't need to thank me. Remember, he's my family now too, or at least he will be. Achiko blushed, barely able to believe she could say something so daring, although it was comforting to see Izuku's turn a similar shade of red. SSS, so what did Tenko say? Izuku stuttered as he immediately changed the subject. He said that he suddenly got an obsession with cleaning. Achiko explained. He spent all of yesterday cleaning his room. He couldn't eat with everyone in the cafeteria because he couldn't stand how messy it was, and he spent super long in the shower cleaning every part of his body. He said he'd never been like that before, so he didn't know where all this came from. Do you have any idea? That? Izuku paused. While Izuku had studied child psychology, he was far from an expert. The only explanation he knew of for a sudden change in a child's behavior would be spontaneous quirk development. But that's impossible. We destroyed his quirk before it could emerge. Izuku assured himself. Mr. Midoriya? Mr. Midoriya! Tenko shouted. Izuku and Achiko looked over and saw Tenko running at them, still covered in paint. The light blue paint in his hair, giving them both a jolt of dread as they were reminded of Tamura Shigaraki. And what he said next would amp up that jolt significantly. I have a quirk. Tenko cheered. Clang. Both Izuku and Achiko dropped their teacups, causing them to spill tea all over the table as they stared at the boy in shock and horror. Watch. Watch, Tenko said, unable to read the room due to his excitement. He picked up a small rock, about the size of his hand, and grabbed it, making sure to touch it with all 5 fingers. Crack. The rock broke apart, but notably, instead of turning to dust, it just turned into tiny pieces of rock. Getting over his shock, Izuku thought up his next steps. He needed to figure out what was going on. Now, I thought we erased her quirk factor? Izuku asked Mai, a bit more aggressively than he'd like. Izuku had quickly gotten Tenko to the lab, so they could study and analyze his quirk and quirk factor. I thought the same, sir, but it appears Tenko's situation was more complicated than we expected, Mai explained. Please look down there, sir. The two were in an observation chamber, and below them was Tenko, in a testing chamber. A scientist handed Tenko a small log, and the boy took it, setting it down beside him on the testing bed, before touching it and activating his quirk. The log broke apart into tiny pieces, before reforming into a small wooden statue of a person, or at least something resembling a wooden statue of a person. It had no features and was rough in a lot of places, but it was human-shaped. Izuku stared down at the boy in shock. That quirk. It bears a striking resemblance to Kai Chisaki's overhaul quirk. My finished. Right now it's too early to get any concrete answers, but we do have a theory as to how any of this is possible. Explain, please, Izuku urged. We believe that, given Tenko's heritage, All for One might have forced the decay quirk onto the boy without his knowledge, Mai explained. But the decay quirk may not have been a natural quirk in itself. We found data from Garaki about making copies of and even modifying quirk factors. It's entirely possible that All for One copied and altered the overhaul quirk, removing its reconstruction capabilities and increasing its destructive ones. As you can see, a quirk can affect a person's behavior quite heavily, and giving someone a quirk so suited to destruction and nothing else could heavily steer that person down the path of villainy. So that tragedy that befell the Shimuras, it wasn't a random accident like with Eri, but an engineered tragedy, courtesy of All for One. Izuku scowled. That is our working theory. I nodded. As for why his quirk wasn't erased, it's possible that since decay was a heavily modified quirk, instead of being destroyed when exposed to the quirk erasing formula, it was simply reverted to its pre-modified state. It had not properly developed, yet as Tenko's body had been rewound before decay emerged, and due to Tenko's mental state, it took extra long for it to properly activate. I see. I suppose that makes sense. Izuku sighed before he looked back down at Tenko. Does his quirk still have that spread effect that decay did? No. It seems like his quirk is now a perfect copy of Overhaul. Mai explained. Then there's no need to attempt to erase his quirk, Izuku said. For now, we'll just give him some special gloves and focus on teaching him how to control his quirk. And what about Eri, sir? Mai asked, wincing as she did so, and wincing even harder when she saw the look of absolute fatigue that fell upon her boss. Part of me just wants to try and add this to the list of things I need to keep secret from her, but that's not really possible. Izuku sighed. Even if she doesn't know that Tenko's quirk is a copy of that man's, she'll likely just get traumatized by looking at it. And it's not like I can exactly hide Tenko's quirk completely from her, so we're just going to have to deal with all of this as it comes. I don't envy you, sir. Mai chuckled. Maria was starting to get used to the future. Well, that's not quite true. She wasn't sure she'd ever really get to the future, because whenever she accepted some of the more surprising things, some other, utterly bizarre thing would happen. But she was becoming more numb to the insanity happening around her, although it was taxing. Which is why she couldn't be happier when Izuku asked her to supervise a camping trip. She felt rather relieved. Just a normal camping trip, with some normalish kids. Kyoku, Fuku, Kira/Nis, Ko, Kanoke, Eri, and Otoko. All right, we're finally here, Kyoku said as they arrived at the clearing in the woods. Aren't we a bit far? Fuku asked as she helped Yuna off the Beowulf they traveled on. They'd all been traveling for hours and none of them were sure why Kyoku had insisted they go so far. It's fine. If any emergencies happen, we can just portal back. And it's not like we're off the house's grounds anyway. Kyoku reassured them, although Maria could see the girls sweating a bit, which was extremely suspicious. Let's just get everything ready, shall we? Maria couldn't help but worry about Kyoku's obviously suspicious behavior, but surely, whatever she was up to couldn't be so bad. She was just a 6-year-old. And so the next hour was spent setting up camp until Maria noticed a peculiar bag. I don't remember packing this. Maria walked over to the bag and unzipped it, and found Jin, bound and gagged inside the bag, looking more bored than anything else. Maria and Jin stared at each other for a while, as Maria's brain took a second to process what she was seeing. Oh hey, Jin's here. Kay chirped happily as she saw Jin in the bag. Guess the Jin's out of the bag, huh? Kyoku said, realizing her little surprise had been unveiled. Maria just stared at the boy in disbelief for a few more seconds, before closing her eyes and taking a deep breath, before taking the gag out of the boy's mouth. Can I go home now? Was the first question Jin asked. Kyoku, what is going on? Maria asked, trying not to let her annoyance leak into her tone too much. Well, I figured Jin staying inside too much wasn't healthy for him, so I brought him camping with us, Kyoku explained. She didn't ask me. I just woke up in this bag, Jin said. Send me back. Oh, don't be like that. Since you're here, you should stay with us. It'll be fun, Kay pleaded as she helped unite the boy. He does stay inside too much, Ko added via text to speech. Sleeping all the time isn't good. Kira peeked up. Like you can talk. Nis pointed out. My past of sleeping through life is why I'm talking, Kira explained to her bodymate. Ugh. Jin groaned as he finally got to his feet. Here, let me cut you a deal, Kyoga said. Why don't you join us this once, and then we'll all leave you alone for a while. Otherwise, we'll just keep bothering you. Deal. Jin pondered it. Part of him wanted to refuse immediately, not liking the idea of giving the person who'd just kidnapped him what they wanted. But on the other hand, Going a while without someone bothering him was a very tempting offer. Ugh. Fine, Jin hissed. Let's just get this over with. Heh, all according to plan, Kyoka said as she smugly crossed her arms. That's great, but I'm still telling your father about this. Maria deadpanned. All according to plan, Kyoka repeated to herself, ignoring the fact that she was definitely grounded when this was over. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX to a nearby lake after everyone had changed into their bathing suits. Upon receiving his water gun, Jin immediately turned and blasted Kyoku in the face. Kyoku staggered, not at all expecting to be blasted immediately. Nice shot, Emma. Kei was next, and without a moment of hesitation, Jin turned his water gun on her and shot her right in the face. This might be a little fun after all. Jin chuckled darkly before he was then shot down by another kid. Okay, who did that? From there it properly descended into chaos, as everyone started blasting each other, running around with their water guns, shooting whoever popped into sight, or whoever just shot them last. Meanwhile, Maria watched from the side, looking over the children fondly as they played. She even saw Moo smirk a couple of times. This reminds me of when me and Grandpa went to the beach, Maria thought, as the memory of herself playing in the water, with her grandfather watching with a fond smile on his face. Something that would never happen again. Maria's smile faded, and she felt a wave of weakness hit her. She banished that thought, to cut off the wave of crippling thoughts that'd follow. She had to keep going. She didn't have a choice. Are you all right, Ms. Maria? Kano asked. Yes, I'm fine. Maria forced herself to answer. Aren't you going to join them? Absolutely not. I detest getting wet. Kano scoffed. Do you know how hard it is to fly when you're soaking wet? Fair enough. Is there anything you want to do while they play? Maria asked. Yes, actually I'd like to talk about maybe updating your wardrobe, Kano said. And maybe your hair. All right, feel free to do it up in whatever style you'd like. Maria said with a small giggle. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX and missed by a good margin. There, I tried it. I'm done, Jin said as he turned around ready to walk away and find a good place to sleep until the next activity. Ah, too bad. The winner was going to get extra servings for dinner, Kyoko added, holding back a snicker as saw Jin suddenly stop. Ugh, I guess I could try a bit more. Jin groaned as he turned around. At least I can't do worse than Kay. Too true. Kay cheered as she threw another horseshoe that landed nowhere near her target. Man, I do suck at this. The fact that you can say that with a smile on your face is truly your greatest boon, Kano said. After a few more games, everyone finally sat down at the tables for dinner. This fish is perfectly seasoned. Fuku, you are my favorite person here. Jin moaned as he dug into his fried fish. Fuku blushed and sank under the table. Don't say things you don't mean. I don't think he was lying, but probably not a hard award to win, Kyoko said as she ate her own food. But seriously, this fish is so good. How do you make food so good without an oven? Baked apple. So good, Eri said as she stuffed her face into her baked treat. It was interesting how you made this. I think I'd like to learn how you did this, Kira said as she ate. Free cheers for Fuku and her food. Kay shouted. Cheers. Cheers. Most of the others shouted. Fuku just let out embarrassed noises from under the table. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX night sky. Couldn't we just have done this at home? No, you simpleton. Yes, the stars are beautiful anywhere where you can see them, but the surrounding forest adds to the beauty. Kano explained in outrage. Agreed. While the sky itself looks similar, somehow being in a forest changes things a lot. Kira explained. I guess. Jin shrugged. I agree, I don't see much of a difference. Nice said. I guess you're both simpletons then. Kira teased. You're lucky I can't stick my tongue out while I'm in here. Nice pouted. Oh no, what would I have done if you stuck your tongue out at me? I simply wouldn't be able to take it. Kira said sarcastically as she rolled her eyes. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Well, most of them did anyway. Maria was currently looking at the top of her tent. knowing damn well she wasn't getting any sleep tonight. All because of that damn feeling. It wasn't even a proper thought. She didn't let herself properly finish the thought, so it was just a feeling in the back of her head that felt like it was gnawing on her brain. Although not finishing the thought didn't really help, because she knew what the thought was. Her head hurt, and she was exhausted from fighting the urge to think, and yet despite how tired she felt, sleep didn't seem to be in the cards for her, because her mind was just too active. Maria took a deep breath for the 50th time today to try and calm herself. All right, that's enough. I need to get my mind off of this. With that, she promptly got up and exited her tent before walking into surrounding woods. Since the kids were asleep, it meant Maria could properly focus on not focusing on her problems. It was a lovely night, all things considered. A cool wind blew through the forest, causing the trees to rustle, giving off pleasant sounds. Her grandfather. The ground was nice and firm and gave off the fresh smell of grass and other plant life. Clear skies meant that the moon could shine down unimpeded. Her grandfather and everyone she ever knew were dead. Bang! Maria slammed her head into the tree. Just stop. Just give me a break. I'm begging you. Her energy expended, Maria turned around and leaned up against the tree before slowly sliding into a sitting position and holding her head in her hands. Why can't my own brain just stop giving grief for 5 seconds? A few seconds of silence followed, before eventually, Maria felt someone tap her shoulder. She looked up and saw Kay standing in front of her. Hey, okay. I thought you'd be asleep by now, Maria said, quickly trying to focus on this rather than her own problems. Me and Kira went for a walk. Kira likes walking, and I like talking, so it was fun, Kay explained. But it looks like you need someone to talk to. I'm fine, I was just thinking about my grandfather, Maria admitted, a forced smile gracing her face. You're still upset because he and everyone else you knew is dead, right? Kay asked, cutting right to the point. Was it that obvious? Maria sighed, immediately losing the strength to continue her facade. I've seen a lot of sad people, so I know when someone's sad. Kay explained as she took a seat on the ground in front of Maria. So what made you think of him? Am I really about to pour my heart out to a 7-year-old? Maria asked herself. Oh, screw it. Maybe just talking about it will help. And it's not like anything ever gets Kay down anyway. I was watching you and everyone else play by the lake, and it reminded me of when me and my grandfather used to play around in the water, Maria admitted somberly. Those bittersweet memories popping up, making it really hard not to cry. And after that I just haven't been able to stop thinking about him. And how we'll never make another memory like that again. Well, that's no good. Kay frowned. Well, your grandpa's not completely gone. He's still with you. In your heart, and in your head. Maria sat in silence for a while, just imagining her grandfather, mostly his face, staring at her, smiling, and slowly, she gave a slight smile back. Yes, I suppose I've at least got that much of him with me. Uh-huh. You have him, and all the good memories you had with him. Kay continued. The past is the past. It'll never come back, but also never go away. Those memories you have with him will have always happened, and no one can unmake them. But you can't stay in the past. You have to keep moving forward and make lots more new memories with other people you love. Like Lou. Lou, I still have Lou. Maria reminded herself, feeling a bit of her strength returning to her, but then suddenly another invasive throat forced its way through. But for how long? With his new crazy superpowers, I keep worrying that one day he's going to die. Kay finished. Probably not. Dad is really careful, and he works really super-duper hard to keep us safe. But even if he fails, even if something does happen, it's not happening right now. Lee's still here, and he'll probably be there when we come back. So you better make as many memories with him as you can. So even when you say goodbye someday, you'll have those memories. And even when Lee's not around, that means you can find all sorts of new people to love and care for. How can it make it sound so easy? Maria asked. You're probably right. I know you are, but how does someone your age, and with all the things you've been through, just say things like that? I don't know. Just the way I am. Kay said, offering a cheerful grin. I don't understand why everyone makes things so complicated. You remember the good things about the past, enjoy the present, and look forward to the future. If you can't enjoy the past, make some new memories in the present so you can enjoy them later. If you can't enjoy the present, work hard so you can enjoy the future. If you know the future's gonna be hard, enjoy the present while you can, So those memories get you through the hard part. Simple as that. Maria laughed. Well, when you say that, it does sound simple. I guess since I'm not enjoying the present right now, I should probably do something about it then. Yup. But right now it's time for sleep. You can't have fun when you're tired. Kay reminded as she got on her feet and offered Maria her hand. You're such a good kid, Kay. Maria smiled as she got up and took Kay's hand before walking back with her to the campsite. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX laughter. The fish jumped high into the air before falling back down towards the sea. They hit the water, and then Jin woke up. Jin quickly checked himself. He always had to be careful with water dreams, but he seemed dry for now. All right, I'm good. Why did the water in that dream look so much prettier? It was clearer, bluer too. It felt so much more real than it ever did before. Is it because I finally saw a lake in real life? Jin wondered. I mean, it was cool, I guess, but was it that different from seeing it from a computer? Who cares? Jin closed his eyes and tried to fall back asleep. But for the first time in a while, Jin felt restless. Why did the water seem so different? After a few minutes, it became clear he wasn't falling back asleep. The chrome-skinned boy groaned in annoyance. Geez, what is up with today? Is it even still today, or is it past midnight? Who cares? Jin slowly got up and left his tent, looking around to see if anyone was keeping watch. No one was, and so Jin slowly walked into the forest. After a few minutes of walking, Jin finally made it to his destination, the lake. Jin went over to the edge of the river and looked at it for a while before his hand it and moving it around a bit. It's just water, like the stuff you'd get from a sink. So why is it so different? It is strange how that works, isn't it? Jin looked behind him and saw Kira standing there. Oh, which one are you? Kira, Nisa's other self. Kira explained. Don't know what that means, don't care. Why did you follow me? Jin asked, turning his attention back to the lake. If someone were to attack you right now, you might die before the guards can jump in. Your body is very weak after all. Kira explained. Oh, so you noticed that, Jin said. Kira nodded. I've been trained to spot weakness. Kyoka noticed too. It's why she made sure all the games we played weren't too physically demanding. She really did want you to have fun, I think. Did you have fun? Jin stayed silent for a while before letting out a sigh. Well, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But me being here probably held you guys back from having more fun. With my weak body and all. Jin sat down and looked at his reflection in the water in front of him. I'm just not good at this kind of stuff. Is that why you like to sleep so much? Kira asked as she took a seat next to Jin. Kinda. In my dreams, I can do anything. I can be an explorer, a hero, a villain, a train driver, anything. Jin said. But in real life, I'd wake up, and it felt couldn't do anything. My quirk made living a normal life impossible. But even now, with the rings, I still can't do much. So, I might as well just dream forever. It's the most fun I'll ever have. That reminds me of something, Kira said, looking at her own reflection in the lake. Back when I was living with my parents, I'd have dreams of us. All three of us, as one big happy family. I'd dream that they loved me. I remember never wanting to wake up from those dreams. Because in real life, no matter how much I tried, those dreams would never come true. Kira then looked up into the night sky. But I never dreamed I could be here. With a new family. A father and mother who love me. Really love me. Just for existing. I never dreamed it. Because I didn't know it could happen. Because that is the limit of dreams. You can do anything you can imagine, but nothing more. Nothing more than I can imagine, Jin repeated. Kira looked back out at the lake. Bigness can make things feel way different. A cup of water seems like nothing, but a lake full of water is beautiful. And the world is so big. I wonder how many things I could never imagine are out there, waiting for me. I can see the entire world anytime I want. Using a computer. Jin was brought up. It's not the same. I don't know why. It just isn't. Kira said. But you realized that, didn't you? Jin stayed silent. Dreams are nice, but they're nothing compared to how much fun living can really be, Kira said. At least, that's my opinion. Why do you all care so much? You, Kyoku K. Why do you all care about how I live my life? Jin finally asked. One day, a boy reached out to me and offered me a new way to live. I didn't understand it at first. Why did he do that? But when I eventually asked him, he said, because the world is more interesting with you in it. Kira said, maybe that's why. Maybe one day, you'll make our lives more interesting too. You really think someone as weak and powerless as me could make the world more interesting? Jin asked as he threw Kira a skeptical look. Izuku Midoriya was someone I was told to kill because he was weak. Izuku Midoriya has not only survived multiple attacks by armies of criminal organizations, he became one of the most powerful men in the world. Kira pointed out. He did all that as a quirkless teenager who was born with nothing. Like I said, the world has so many things you can't imagine. So who really knows what you can and can't do? After that, Jin once again went quiet, looking back down at his reflection for a while longer. For the next couple of minutes, they sat in silence, letting the forest ambience fill their ears. I'm not getting any more sleep tonight, am I? Jin finally asked. Rethinking your life does keep you up at night. Trust me, I know, Kira said. You ever do that stone-throwing thing? Jin asked. The only time I ever threw a stone, it was through someone's head. So no, Kira answered. But it can't be that hard. Wow, the sauce on this steak is super unique. I've never tasted anything like it. Amai exclaimed as she ate alongside Yami. Yami looked over at her steak and squinted. That's blood. Amai paused for a second, before promptly continuing her meal. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX trading papers. Kyoshi stopped and looked up at Sori, his grin growing a bit wider. You really want to find out? Well, yeah. That's why I asked, Sori responded, completely clueless as usual. Is it morally sound to make a pass on someone this stupid? Kyoshi asked himself. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX girls in her room, having a tea party. Shiruku looked past Kano, at the massive portrait of herself behind her. Yes. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX You are not a burden. Eri piped up. Murder is okay. Kyoku added. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Don't worry. No matter what happens, caretaker always comes out on top. Kiba proudly proclaimed. Your mom would beg to differ. Mina had to try so hard not to say that out loud. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Yonda and Shino watched as Sai and Kyoshi tried to put out a raging fire in the kitchen. So what were you trying to cook now? Yonda hissed. I wasn't trying to cook. I was just trying to wash dishes. Shina sobbed. Why does oil look so much like soap? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Izuku looked down at the latest batch of intruders, who attempted to sneak their way to his home, but were quickly caught by his security and were now tied up before him. So tell me, what exactly made you think you could get past one of the most technologically advanced armies in the world? I don't know. I just thought I could take him. One of the villains shrugged. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Fear Lady Kiba. I have a solution, Hinata said. Ah, excellent. As expected of my retainer. Kiba smiled proudly. Hinata then proceeded to get on her hands and knees. Come, Lady Kiba, sit on my back. Perhaps there is such a thing as too much loyalty, Kiba replied. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Izuku asked. Because whenever I see people eating meat, I get reminded of all the people I turned into ground beef, Kira explained. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Nice balls, bro. Yonda. Bonk. Aga. Kin screamed as Yonda's hammer slammed into his balls while he was in his forearms form. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX amazing. It's like Yami has a passive skill that does AoE damage right to my heart. He just looks at me, and I go AFK, just standing around lagging like a buggy bot. And the worst part is how casually he grinds my affection points. All he has to say is GLHF, it's GG for me. Okay, Now could you repeat that in Japanese? Yonda sighed. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Fuku said. Cool. So can she roll over? Or jump? Kei asked. Yuna, wave dash please, Fuku ordered. Wa dash. And then the bear proceeded to wave dash. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. My makeup, Sheena gasped. That's it. You're losing leg privileges. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Hey, you think we should make a club for all the kids here who've taken a life? Kyoko asked. The fact that there are enough kids for that club to exist saddens me in ways words cannot express, Izuku replied. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. I'll have you know, assuming I like cheese simply because I am a rat, is very quirkless, Giza said, before nibbling on some cheese. It also happens to be correct. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. No, Dr. We cannot ask people that. Izuku refused. I don't care how many incentives we give, there is no way we can ask people to give us their literal souls. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Sai slammed 2 pieces of bead on either side of Sori's head. What are you? Hungry? Give me some of that bread. Sori replied. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. My parents created me for violence, and to bring their enemies to oblivion, Seikyo said. That's true, but please don't say it like that, Amai said. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. People think I'm some damn mutt. That I'm a stupid thug. The nerve of those knuckleheads. Yaba growled. G rolled her eyes, before throwing a chew toy over Yaba's head, which she jumped up and caught with her mouth before she started chewing on it. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Ugh, I swear I want to strangle you sometimes. Yonda growled. Why? You know it won't work. Fu scoffed. Better question, why strangling? Stabbing is way more efficient. Kira said. Unless you want them to suffer. In that case, try drowning them. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Remember, money can't buy you happiness, Izuku said. Untrue. I might want to earn 1,000 yen. Kyoko asked. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX wrong? Kiba asked. Be positive. Kano hissed. Well, I'm trying, but seriously, what's wrong? Kiba asked again. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Stop asking these questions, Fu said. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX green onion in a menacing fashion. I surrender. AKA immediately yelped. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX my dead body. Fuhai responded through the door. Kiba looked over to Fu next to her, and before he could say anything, she made his shadow grab him and lay him down, before jumping over him. Okay, I did it. Come out. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX and then abruptly stopping and breaking into a coughing fit. Oh, shit. That was not a good idea. Ah. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX before smirking. But I lived. Me and Yami are on a seafood diet, Amai said. We see food, and we eat it, Yami explained. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Hey Sue, what makes you so loyal to Midoriya? Mina asked. Finders keepers, Sue answered. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Ow, Aries said as she bumped her head. Before she could even clutch her head in pain, she felt two large hands grab her, Vera's hands. The large Russian woman then proceeded to suplex the child. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Ga? I will destroy everything you love. Kiba shouted out in rage as she spiked her controller into the ground. Then destroy yourself, Lady K, Amai said smugly. Don't think I won't, Kiba threatened. If caretakers taught me anything, it's how to destroy myself. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Mommy asked over the phone. Izuku slammed his desk in shock. That was yours. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Of course. Vera then took out a sniper rifle and went over to the window. I can see them all just fine from here. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX plans? Yonda asked. Thwarting your plans? Fu repeated. Are you? Yonda asked. Yes. Fu answered. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX around her axe, with healing intent. Fuku should know better than to be surprised by anything at the Midoriya Foundation at this point. This place was kind of a hub for chaotic activities and unpredictable circumstances. And Fuku would like to think she'd gotten used to that to a degree, which is probably why she was able to keep her quirk from activating when she walked into the kitchen early in the morning and found an 8-foot-tall demon man preparing a pot of soup. She just screamed her head off. Ah! Hi! Ga? Cease now that horrid cry, lest my hearing wither and die. The demon growled as he shot Fuku a threatening look. His voice was loud and deep, like a dragon with a British accent. Fuku was paralyzed with fear. All she could do was tremble and look up at the person in front of her. As previously mentioned, he was tall, but he was just as wide as well. His arms and chest are thick and burly. He wore red chef's attire, including the little chef's hat, but he also, strangely enough, wore a purple cape that seemed rather out of place. With his attire covering most of his body, Fuku could only see his face and hands. He had green skin, and his nails were long and sharp like claws. Where ears normally would be were green fins, and had 2 horns atop his bald head. His eyes were pure red, no pupils or anything, just red, and his teeth were sharp and jagged. All around, he looked terrifying. The man looked down at the terrified child before him and huffed. Stow away that ignorant fear. To bring you harm is not why I'm here. Calm yourself, regain your breath. For I am merely just a chief. Why you're the chief? Fuku asked as she slowly started to regain her composure. That is my role. Food and drinks, to you I dole. Over this kitchen, I lay my claim, and Alexander Hart is my name. The man introduced as he went back to stirring the soup. Are you speaking in rhyme? Fuku asked. The big, burly demon man being the chef was one thing. After the initial surprise, it wasn't that weird. The rhyming thing was. Can you not hear? Or do my words leave through one ear? Hart said. Now state it clear what you desire. From this damnable new hire. But if you cannot bear to see my face, then I suggest you leave this place. And no, your face is fine. I was just surprised. Fuku as she slowly backed towards the door. I was gonna cook but since you're here I guess I'll just leave. And with that, Fuku ran out of the kitchen as fast as her legs could carry her, leaving the chief alone in the kitchen once again. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Kiba, Fu, and Fuhai sat together in the cafeteria. It's over. He probably thinks I'm quirkless against mutants. He's going to kill me, I just know it. Fuku wailed as she planted her face on the table. Wait. Big sis Fuku, you can't die. If you die, I might get a heart attack and die. Fuhai cried out in fear. Pretty sure that can't happen, and Fuku, Dad would never hire anyone who would hurt us, Fu said. Have more faith in caretaker. I'm sure this man is a just and trustworthy individual, Kiba reassured her. Suddenly, the door to the kitchen flew open, and out came Chef Hart, pushing a cart with a giant pot full of soup on it. Food. Food. The food is done. Breakfast time has begun. The time has come to fill your plate with mouth-watering food, made with hate. Everyone just looked at the man in stunned silence, taken aback by the man's eccentric nature. Hart paid them no mind, as he went to each table, gave them a bowl, and then gave them some soup, before moving on. Are you wearing a fucking cape? Yaba asked as Hart served her. The garb I don is my choice. Now fill your mouth and silence your voice. Hart answered curtly. So, is the rhyming thing part of your quirk, or is that just a weird life choice? G asked. You talk too much, you clamorous lot. The way I speak is your business not. Hart said as he finished serving them and moved on to the next table. Finally, he moved on to Fuku's table. Hello, sir. I am the great and mighty Kiba, ruler of eternal darkness. Kiba introduced. Humph. Darkness is just the lack of light, an emptiness with nothing in sight. If nothing is what you wish to rule, then child you are but a fool. Hart said as he gave Kiba her food. Huh. That's the first time anyone's called you stupid in rhyme before, Kiba. Fu snickered. I'm really sorry about earlier. Please don't kill me. Fuku quickly apologized. It was hard to tell due to the way his eyes looked, but Fu could have sworn he rolled them. Your words are wasted, I do not care. I've seen it many times, that fearful stare. If I put all those curs to rout, then of this world, I'd be cast out. That has to be a quirk. No way he can come up with these so quickly. G said. If he is, then that's pretty damn impressive. Yaba said, before finally eating her meal. And as soon as the spoon passed her lips, her eyes went wide. Holy hell, this is good. Quickly this sentiment echoed across the cafeteria. As the kids started eating, they immediately realized just how good the food was. This is incredible. Kiba shouted as she ate. It's like I'm in heaven. Fu said before pausing. Wait, am I in heaven? Did I die again? Fu looked over at the table Yanda was sitting at before looking back. Nope, this definitely isn't heaven. Also, if it was, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to taste again. I guess it's pretty alright. Kyoka said. Not as good as Daddy's cooking. This is amazing. Compared to this, my cooking is like garbage. Fuku thought as she stuffed as much food into her mouth as possible. If I could learn how to cook like this. And with that, I'm done with you bunch. I shall take my leave. See you at lunch. Hart said before he promptly left the cafeteria. I doubt he'll teach me. Fuku thought. Unless I can find some way to make him like me. But how do I do that? I still don't know how I even got my brothers and sisters to like me. Oh, what should I do? Fuku, just as Izuku for help. She heard Yanda say from all the way at her table. Oh, right. Fuku blushed. That sure is an interesting chef you hired, boss. Mina said as she hung around Izuku's office. Where did you find him? Another dumpster? A prison in England. Izuku answered casually as he focused on signing his paperwork. And what in the where? Mina paused. Alexander Hart, Aka the demon. He was wanted for many crimes and was set to be imprisoned for life, at least before I stepped in. Izuku said. Gonna need a bit more of an explanation than that, boss. Mina said. While he's not exactly a good person, but he's not as bad as his record would imply. Izuku explained. Although the reason I trust him is because of his quirk. Contract. It's a very interesting quirk. Powerful yet dangerous, for the user, I mean. Basically, you can enter an agreement with Mr. Hart. You give him an offering, and he performs a service for you. The greater the offering, the better equipped Mr. Hart becomes for that task. Once the agreement is made, neither side will be able to violate it. If Mr. Hart attempts to violate his side of the agreement, then his body will force him to uphold his end. If the contractor attempts to get out of their end of the deal, they will quickly grow sicker and sicker until either they go back to upholding their word, or they die. Oh, is that why his food is so good? Mina asked. It's half the reason. He'd picked up cooking as a hobby beforehand, so the deal just kinda makes his job easier. Izuku said. Anyway, the deal was pretty simple. My offer was his freedom from prison, and he works as my chef/emergency bodyguard. Neither of us can betray the other, and we both have to act in each other's best interest, within reason. So you get a trustworthy, super strong worker, and you can keep up your completely random hiring practices. Mina said, by the way, how did you even hear about this guy? He's all the way in Britain. I threw a dart at a map, it landed on Britain, did some looking, then I found him. Izuku explained. I'll never be bored with you around, boss. Never. Mina giggled. Also, what's with the rhyme thing? Oh, that's just something he does. Izuku shrugged. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. Izuku said. The door opened, with Fuku, Yami, and Hinata coming in. Mr. Midoriya, we'd like to learn how to cook for Mr. Hart, but we don't know how to convince him. Hinata stated. We'd like your assistance. I figured that'd be the case. I already talked with him about it, and he agreed to teach you. Although you might find his instruction to be a bit strict. Izuku winced. I wouldn't suggest learning under him. I'm sure we can handle it. Hinata said. Yeah. Yami nodded. Fuku started to look like she was having second thoughts. I don't know. Maybe this is a bad idea. Nonsense. Hinata proclaimed. Come now. You are Lady Kiba's dear sister. Are you going to let a bit of criticism get in your way? Fuku took a deep breath. Why, yeah. I can take a bit of criticism. I can do this. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Rein in your tears and bring them to a halt, lest you ruin your mixture with a sea of salt. Chef Hart shouted at Fuku while giving her one of the meanest glares she'd seen in a while. I'm trying, Fuku cried, and yet you still wail. If this is your best, then your fate is to fail. Chef Hart roared, before turning to Hinata, who was chopping vegetables. You there? Watch how you chop. Do you think you can feed anybody this slop? Some chunks are too big and others too small. You'd best do it right or don't bother at all. I finished the sandwich, Yami said, walking up to Chef Hart and presenting him with a plate with a sandwich on it. Chef Hart snatched the sandwich off the plate and took a big bite out of it, chewing it for a few seconds with a thoughtful expression, before promptly spitting it out, tossing the sandwich on the floor, and then breathing fire on it, turning it to ash. Awful, terrible, deplorable trash. Such a dreadful thing deserves to be ash. What was wrong with it? Yami asked, looking not particularly bothered by the chef's overreaction. The way you cut lettuce was not up to snuff, and the bacon was clearly not cooked enough. Chef Hart explained. Tell me, boy, do you not have eyes in that head? Could not see? You used the wrong bread. This was a mistake. This was a mistake. Fuku lamented. I miss being taught by Mr. Sato. Correct again, Yonda. Yonda loved school. Maybe it's just because she was the smartest 5-year-old around, but she never got tired of hearing the teacher praise her for getting something right. All right now, can anyone tell me what this is? The teacher said as she pointed to the chalkboard. Yonda raised her hand and opened her mouth to answer the question. And then, without warning, her world changed. You objehegilatate qua fubtheagi legiode. Suddenly Yonda heard noises coming from every direction. A cacophony of what sounded like words, but there were so many people speaking that it all sounded like garbled nonsense. Huh, what's going on? Yonda was confused for a moment, but that confusion quickly turned to fear as she frantically looked around for the source of such a horrible noise. What's that noise? Everyone else in the class looked just as alarmed, but instead of looking around for noise, they were all looking at her. And the noise grew louder. Helihilaof we gedgod puyaji hialad tigabawid diag. Why is everyone looking at me? Why is it so loud? Yonda covered her ears to try and stop herself from hearing the noises, but to no avail. Fear quickly turned to panic as Yonda's breath started to become erratic and her body started to tremble. Her classmates and her teacher were trying to say something. Still, despite seeing their mouths move, she couldn't hear them over the seemingly omnipresent noise. Make it stop. Please make it stop. Yonda begged, tears pouring out of her eyes. Mommy, Daddy, please make it stop. But it didn't stop. Not even for a second. Unending noise, every second, from everywhere, sounding like it was coming from inside her own head. Soon her vision began to grow blurry. It felt like she couldn't breathe, but her breath was out of control. Panicking even more now, Yonda left her seat and ran out of the classroom as fast as she could, hoping to escape the noise, but once again this proved fruitless. Eventually, her strength started to fade, causing Yonda to trip, landing flat on her face. Her vision went black, and she passed out in the middle of the hallway. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX groggy, and her ears had been plugged deep with some strange tubes. They felt odd and uncomfortable, and any time she moved her head she could feel them, and uncomfortable deep inside her ears they were. But the noise was gone, thankfully. Although it wasn't just that horrible noise that vanished, but so did all the noise. Yonda couldn't hear a thing, and the silence was almost as unnerving. "What's going on? Why can't I hear?" Yonda asked, speaking to no one in particular. As panic started to rise up within her once again, a few moments later a nurse quickly came into the room. "Miss Nurse, why can't I hear? What happened to me? Am I dying?" Yonda asked frantically, as she started to get more and more scared with each paranoid thought that entered her head. The nurse was alarmed for a second, but quickly regained her composure and took a quick look at the machines that had been plugged into her, before going over to a drawer and pulling out a needle. She then went over to her IV bag and injected the needle into a slit. "What was that? Am I going to be all right?" Yonda asked. The nurse walked over to a nearby table and picked up the whiteboard and marker that had been left there. She wrote something on it quickly before showing it to Yonda. "Please calm down, you're not going to die." "Then why can't I hear? What was that noise?" Yonda asked, not really calming down all too much, as she was still dazed and confused. "It seems like your quirk developed." The nurse wrote before erasing it and writing something else. "You're not used to it yet, so it's causing you some problems, but we're going to help you." "Okay." It wasn't long until the drugs started to kick in and Yonda calmed down. But that feeling of discomfort never went away, as Yonda spent her time in eerie silence. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX minds of those around her and speak telepathically. She could even hear and speak through walls. However, due to her inexperience with her quirk and just the sheer amount of people thinking at any point in time, in any given location, she was unable to accurately discern what anyone was saying. It was like a deaf person suddenly being able to hear for the first time, in the middle of a stadium filled with people screaming their lungs out. Thankfully, plugging her ears completely would allow her some silence. Unfortunately, that silence didn't last long. Given her condition, the hospital decided it was better to send her to a quirk counseling facility. It was in a more isolated location, so in theory, it should be a better environment for her to learn how to use her quirk. As Yonda lay in her bed, staring up at the wall with bloodshot, baggy eyes, she didn't really feel like that was the case. In fact, right now if you asked Yonda to describe the Chikawara quirk counseling ward, she would say hell. They had taken the plugs out of her ears, and they said it would be better for her to get used to hearing people's voices in her head constantly. And while they said she would be hearing fewer people due to the ward being in an isolated location, Yonda didn't really notice much of a difference, leading to her spending her days with the thoughts of the hundreds of patients and employees constantly. She rarely left her bed, partially because it was hard to focus on anything with the voices in her head, but mostly because she constantly wanted to sleep. Sleep was her only salvation, the only time when she could have some peace and quiet. But actually falling asleep was something that seemed almost impossible most of the time. Even putting aside the constant voices in her head, which wasn't exactly easy, everything about this place just made it uncomfortable to sleep in. Her being in an unfamiliar location, away from her family and anything familiar to her. The cheap bed and cheap blanket barely did anything considering how cold they kept this place for no reason. And the pillow. Yonda had never understood just how important a good pillow was to a good night's sleep, but now she would never forget it. It's like it was designed to be the most uncomfortable excuse for a pillow there ever was. Hard, stiff, and cold. All of it made for a truly unpleasant experience, to say the least. The only breaks she got from failing to fall asleep were the quirk counseling sessions. Yonda always tried her hardest to learn whatever they were teaching her as quickly as possible, to be a good student like she always was. But it was hard for a sleep-deprived little girl to learn so much, so quickly, especially when she had hundreds of thoughts being shoved into her head at all times. I want to go home, Yonda thought as she cried into her pillow for the who knows how manieth time this week. I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. Eventually, a nurse came in to tell her to be quiet. Although that was easier said than done. It was hard to tell when she was speaking or when she was thinking anymore. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX spent in absolute agony. The only silver lining was that she was making progress with her quirk control. Pretty fast progress according to the doctors. Of course, they were nowhere close to finding a way to turn her quirk off, and they didn't even know if she could. But she was able to at least separate the voices into sentences and actually understand what people were saying, or rather, thinking. Naturally, however, that silver lining came with its own issue. I'm hungry. I'm hot. I'm cold. I want my mommy. I want my papa. I hate those stupid adults. I can't wait for my shift to end. I fucking hate kids. Why did I even take this job? I swear I'm gonna punt one of these kids one day. I want to go home. 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 Yonda's eye twitched as she was forced to hear the never-ending sea of complaints and negativity that spewed from everyone's minds. People liked to complain was something Yonda had learned very quickly. They complained about anything and everything, which Yonda found strange because, from her perspective, they didn't have all that much to complain about. She would gladly take being too cold, or too hot, or too hungry, or itchy, or whatever if it meant she could finally turn her quirk off. They didn't have to deal with listening to everyone's thoughts 24/7. So why did they complain so much? And you'd think that at some point, they'd work to resolve their issues and stop complaining, right? No. Unlike Yonda, most of the time people just complained and didn't do anything to make their situation better. She especially hated the many of the workers here. Yonda didn't want to be here either, but the difference was they had a choice. They didn't have to take this job if they hated it so much. But they did, and now it was her problem. And even when someone did resolve their current issues, they typically just found something else to complain about. While there were some positive thoughts, they got drowned out in the sea of whining. It was like no one was happy in this place. Yonda couldn't wait to leave this miserable hellhole. At long last the day had come. The day she'd leave this nightmare behind. The doctors had said that she had enough proficiency with her quirk that she could finally leave. She still was in a constant state of discomfort due to being assaulted by people's thoughts every second of every day, but she could at least function properly now. And hopefully, now that she was leaving the ward, the outside world would be a bit more positive. Yonda happily skipped outside the ward and found her father waiting for her in front of his car. Her face brightened, and she opened her mouth to greet him. Well, it was nice while it lasted. Wish she could have stayed here a bit longer. So long, peace and quiet. I swear I should have ditched those two when I had the chance. As soon as Yonda heard her father think that, the smile slowly faded from her face. What had her father meant by that? He couldn't have been talking about her, could he? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX parents think negatively and do so more than anyone else she'd heard, was another. Fuck, I overslept. Why didn't that bitch wake me up? Worthless piece of trash. Why did I ever agree to marry him? One day I swear I'm gonna kill my fucking boss. And then there were their thoughts about her. I swear kids only exist to be parasites. Why the hell do I have to be the one with a deaf kid? And with such a creepy quirk. If it weren't for Yonda, I'd be rich by now, I swear. I should have made him use a condom. There were many things Yonda didn't understand. But she was always good at learning. And with the help of the internet, and comparing her parents' thoughts to the thoughts of other people's parents, she had started to come to the conclusion that there was something wrong with her family. She'd never been super close to her parents, but she had trusted them, cared about them, maybe even loved them. Or did she? A daughter should love her parents, and the parents should love their daughter. That was what they taught in school. That was what she'd learned online. That's what felt natural. But Yonda was starting to wonder if she understood what love was, because it didn't feel like there was any love in her house at all. However, Yonda was a quick learner, and soon she learned how right she was. One night, while she was having dinner with her parents, she heard this. I can't wait for these two to go to bed so I can see Ayano. Her father thought. Sleeping with her always makes life feel worth it. Yonda raised an eyebrow in confusion. Daddy? Mommy's name isn't Ayano. People didn't make sense to Yonda. Why did they do things that made them unhappy? Why would you marry someone you didn't love? Why start a family if you're going to hate having one? Those were the questions that went through Yonda's head as she was taken to her new home, the Kahari orphanage. Her whole world had been turned upside down ever since she'd awakened her quirk. She thought she was smart, but there were so many things she didn't understand. It's like she'd been playing the kiddie pool the whole time, but then she was suddenly thrown into the ocean. It made her feel so powerless, weak, but there was only one thing she could do about it. What she was best at: learning. She'd learn more about the world and the people in it. She'd keep on learning until she understood everything. People were, generally, stupid. Really, really stupid. This was something Yonda had come to understand fairly quickly as she pursed all the books at the nearby library. World history, psychology, and pretty much any studying she did on humans and how they acted quickly informed Yonda that while there were some smart people, like herself, most of the world consisted of absolute morons. And her quirk confirmed this. Most of the kids her age couldn't even understand half of what she was learning. Nor did they bother to try. They just went around thinking the simplest thoughts imaginable and living their simple lives. The adults weren't much better. Like her parents, so many of them put themselves in situations they didn't like and then complained about it, never bothering to fix their own problems, never bothering to try. "Hey Yonda, you suck," she heard someone say. Yonda just sighed. This was not uncommon at the orphanage. Yonda didn't really care to interact with any of the idiot mouth breathers that did nothing but whine, and even if she could, her quirk made communicating quite difficult. It was hard enough just to exist when you're constantly bombarded by other people's, mostly negative, thoughts, let alone focusing enough to have a conversation with someone. Combine all that with the fact that her quirk was viewed as creepy, meaning that she was not particularly popular. Not that she cared to be. Although to be fair, she didn't care to do much of anything anymore. All she did was go down to the local library and either spend the day on the computer or take a book back to her room. She didn't think people would have any reason to mess with her, as she tried to keep to herself and not let loose how much she absolutely despised everyone else around her. But another fact about people Yonda learned rather quickly is that many of them liked to be cruel for seemingly no reason. Yonda had actually gone down a rather deep rabbit hole after she made the mistake of trying to figure out just how cruel mankind could be. If there was ever a time Yonda wished to unlearn something, it was that day. But on a more personal level, many of the kids would, at random times, call out to her, making fun of her, saying gross things, etc., because they knew she was listening. She had no choice but to listen, and it was really getting on her last nerve. People already bothered her just by existing around her, and now they were actively trying to piss her off. But what could she do about it? Revenge was the first thing that came to her mind. To really give him something to whine about. But what could she do? She wasn't suited for beating people up. Seriously, what was her quirk useful for, other than learning people's secrets? And that's when Yonda got an idea. People know that I can read minds. So maybe they'll believe whatever I say. Yonda pondered as a devilish smirk crawled up her face. They are all idiots after all. Yonda watched on as three boys, now covered in cuts and bruises, were scolded by the orphanage director. It had been simple, really simple. All she had to do was tell one of them that the other two stole his dessert, and the violent idiots proceeded to get into a fight. Yonda was amazed at how quickly the three friends turned on each other, how easily they played into her plan. It made her feel good. As she watched them dance to her tune, she felt a rush, unlike anything she'd ever felt before. And for the first time, in so long, it felt like she started to understand this confusing world. She knew what she did was wrong. She knew that it was wrong to feel good about it. But she was only human. She got caught eventually. In hindsight, it was only natural that when someone goes around spreading lies, it's only a matter of time until everyone figures out you're a liar. It took a while though. Yonda had spread anger and distrust throughout the entire orphanage, getting people to fight each other, getting people in trouble, and tearing apart bonds on a whim. And every time she did it, she felt the same thrill she did when did it the first time. She just couldn't stop herself. These little schemes were the only things that really brought her any amount of joy anymore. And with a quirk like hers, it's what she's suited for anyway. By now she'd figured out that she wasn't really a good person. Good people don't feel happy about doing bad things to others. But Yonda liked to believe she wasn't a bad person either. It's not like people were getting that hurt. And sometimes she even felt a bit guilty about what she did. She was just selfish, like so many people throughout history. And honestly, she could live with that. But, eventually, the adults figured out that she was too involved in many of the incidents around the orphanage and got suspicious. And once they questioned the kids and realized that she was involved with every incident, that's when they realized what she'd done. Next thing she knew, she was being taken away by some people who belonged to a group called the OPCCC. Yonda had, apparently, been on a watch list ever since her quirk developed, and now that she'd done this, she'd proven herself dangerous enough to be considered an OPC. It was kind of flattering. Honestly, this whole thing kind of felt like a reward, like acknowledgement for all the work she put in. Yeah, she was locked in a room and couldn't leave for who knows how long. But to be fair, as long as she had access to the internet, books, and idiots, she'd be fine. Well, fine. The people here were particularly awful. Cheating, abuse, drugs, and other terrible things ran rampant in this place. Guess the internet was right about the government. It's so comforting to know the people running the country were as evil as can be. It made her feel bad for the few truly good souls that did work here. There were fewer people here, so she was actually able to hear the good people this time. And it was refreshing. It left her with a bit of hope that there were actually good people in this world. Part of her wished she was one of them. Today was a bad day. She'd had these before, where nothing particularly bad happened, but she just couldn't anymore. Days where the strength she'd built and all the coping mechanisms she'd developed for the constant sea of thoughts flowing into her head at all times just failed her. And it almost felt like she was back where she started. Yonda lay in bed, curled into the fetal position, her blankets shoved into her ears. She knew it was futile. Only special equipment could completely plug her ears, and she didn't have any of that. But she needed a break. Just a day? She'd even take an hour. Just any time at all without the voices. She just wanted some silence. Was that too much to ask? Ag. Yonda threw her blanket aside and started frantically looking around her room for anything she could use to stop the pain. And that's when her eyes landed on it. A pair of scissors. One of her guards had dropped them earlier. Typical negligent guards. As she looked at them, a thought surfaced. If plugging her ears stopped her quirk, what if she just didn't have ears anymore? She'd finally be free. Yonda got out of bed and walked towards the scissors. And with little hesitation, she brought them to her ears. Silence. Sweet, sweet silence. It had been so long since the voices were silenced. The pain didn't matter. Only the silence. It didn't take OPCCC long to notice what she'd done. Honestly, the fact that she managed to do it at all spoke volumes about how much they cared for her well-being, but she didn't care. All Yonda could do was smile as she watched the doctors fix her up. She had no idea what horrible thoughts they could be thinking. None at all. She had no clue. She was in the dark again. Useless girl. Huh. Yonda's eyes widened as she heard a voice pop up in her head again. No. I wish she'd die. Maybe we should let her bleed. Waste of time. I want to go home. Can we eat her? I hate my wife. I hate everyone. My boss should jump off a building. All of a sudden, the voices were back, and louder than ever. So many voices, she couldn't even tell where they were all coming from. No. Stop. Yonda screamed as she clutched her head in pain, frantically shaking as the doctors tried to keep her still. Quickly they restrained her and injected something into her, sending her into a deep sleep. It was funny. Real funny. According to the doctors, the voices Yonda had heard after she cut off her ears weren't real, but a form of paranoid schizophrenia. Apparently, years of hearing people's negativity and hatred had caused her to develop some form of trauma. Now, whenever she couldn't hear people's thoughts directly, her mind would just project what she was thinking in the form of auditory hallucinations. Yonda actually laughed when she read that. She could never escape her quirk, even when it wasn't active. It had permanently ruined her. The hallucinations were actually worse than her quirk most of the time. It felt like she was in the middle of a city, filled with the angriest, most hateful people in the world. Her own personal nightmare, that she wouldn't be able to wake from until her ears grew back. which would likely take months. Part of her considered just ending it. But OPCC had increased the security in her room to the point where she would actually have difficulty hurting herself. So, she had no choice but to live with it. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX told that he was a benevolent, loving person. Yonda hoped he was, because at this point, she was getting really tired of being surrounded by deplorable idiots. If this Izuku Midoriya didn't prove to be any better, she was just about ready to quit. But she'd worry about that if it came to it. For now, she had to practice how she was going to greet him. First impressions were important after all. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Midoriya was as close to perfect as she'd found. He was the embodiment of selflessness, of kindness, of love. And he was smart too. She could tell he was one of the special people. The people that rose above the idiot masses. In just a few short days, she'd felt more a connection to him than she ever had with her real parents. And miraculously, it wasn't just him. The Midoriya Foundation was almost like paradise. Finally, she was free from that sea of constant negativity. Free to actually enjoy life again. At least for now. By now Yonda knew better than to expect things to improve. The world was inherently a cruel and unforgiving place, and the moment you found happiness, the world would fight to take it away from you. But Yonda wouldn't give up without a fight. She'd make sure this happy place stayed happy. She'd do whatever it takes to finally live her life again. This is the last part at least until more chapters are out. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to support the writer. Like, sub, and share the video for more awesome stories. See you in the next video.